All right, once again, recapping the latest news on Hurricane Florence. It has weakened just a little bit more. The winds are 110. It's a Category 2 hurricane. Still moving northwest at 17, roughly about 350 miles to the east of Charleston. Actually, the track really hasn't changed very much except the end of the track. But what has changed is the fact since the storm has weakened, it probably will sit over North Carolina, unfortunately, for a little while, and then moving inland and will weaken to a tropical storm before it moves into South Carolina as a tropical storm and not a hurricane. That's the best news we can give you. The bad news is within the storm, the hurricane hunters tell us the wind field is expanding. Now getting bigger in terms of the wind field, but it is weakening in terms of its strength. So again, we'll take every little bit of good news that we can get, but that is certainly good news in terms of the strength of the storm, and we'll just have to wait and see if this is a kind of a temporary shift or a permanent all the way to the coast. Any way you slice it, it's a big storm, guys.
Yeah, it most certainly
Let that dry air get into the eye.
It's trying. It is trying.
Yeah, okay. Right. Thanks, Rob.
And of course, we appreciate you spending part of your evening right here with us. We remind you to stay tuned for the very latest by checking out the weather apps.
Now, Count on 2, live and local in the Lowcountry. This is News 2 at 11.
Good evening. I'm Carolyn Murray.
And I'm Brendan Clark. While Hurricane Florence continues to make its way toward the coastline, the Lowcountry, we are all remaining on high alert.
We most certainly are. So let's get straight to the Lowcountry's chief meteorologist, Rob Fowler, who has the very latest on Florence. Rob, you're looking at the latest information.
Yeah, we were chatting off camera. This is good news. We see that weakening trend continuing now as Florence is now down to a Category 2 hurricane, winds of 110, but that's on the high end of Category 2, so very close still to a major hurricane. It is moving northwest at 17, and the pressure is 957 millibar. That has been coming up. Now, some significant changes, not in the track, but in the intensity, because it is weakening, and think it probably will continue to stay as a 2, potentially making landfall as a 2. Then, because it's coming down in strength, it won't take long to weaken. So once it gets over land, instead of a hurricane, which was the last update, moving into South Carolina, now officially it's going to be a tropical storm, a strong tropical storm with winds of 70 miles an hour right there on the state line, and that's Friday evening. Then it moves right towards the low country of South Carolina as a tropical storm. Officially the winds at 45 miles an hour, and then it moves off to the northwest as a tropical depression. So you can see its travel path through the state of South Carolina, but keep in mind now it's going to be moving very, very slowly. So what that means is the impacts will be long lasting here in our state. Here's a look at what's going on, and we kind of talked about this at 10 o'clock on the CW. You kind of see this area here. Well, the eye is very ragged right now. In fact, cloud covered. We understand from our hurricane hunters only about half the eye is closed. So there's some dry air coming in to the storm, and that's helping to weaken it. But still, the wind field is expanding. The hurricane force winds now about 80 miles from the center, mainly north and east of the center, and the tropical storm force winds have now moved to 195 miles from the center. So that means the wind field is expanding. A lot of folks will be impacted by this. Well, we've been talking about Florence a lot, but a lot of people ask me, how does this compare with some other hurricanes that have impacted the state of North Carolina? Well, you can see Hurricane Hugo that moved through the Charleston area and then moved very quickly up to the north and northeast. Then we had Hazel back in 1954. That impacted North Carolina. And of course, we all remember Hurricane Floyd in 1999. But see, this track is much different, much higher, and going in at a different angle compared to the other storms that have impacted the Tar Heel state of North Carolina. So again, looks like it also will be a Category 2 when it makes landfall. It's not going to turn out to sea. We feel pretty confident about that. The ridge is still steering it off to the north and west. So the most likely scenario is that middle track that will take it into southeastern North Carolina before it bends back into South Carolina. And then we have rain and wind to deal with. I'm going to break down what we can expect coming up for the next few days, especially this weekend. Our impact days, mainly Saturday and Sunday, Brendan and Carolyn, coming up in the full forecast in just a few minutes.
Preparations are underway across the low country as this hurricane moves toward the Carolina shore.
Hundreds of thousands of people heeding warnings and heading away from the coastline, while others are staying put and hoping for the best. News 2's Sophia Arizosa joins us now live with the latest on what people are doing ahead of this storm. Good evening, Sophia.
Good evening, Carolyn and Brendan. The drive through downtown Charleston tonight was eerily quiet as people prepare for the impact of Florence. One of the major concerns in the coming days will be coastal flooding. And right now I am standing on the Battery in downtown Charleston, where we are used to seeing the seawater crash over the seawall and into the city during these major storms. But this is far from the only area that is dealing with this threat. Today, I spent the afternoon on Folly Beach, where they too have their eyes on flooding. Businesses and restaurants along Center Street boarded up.
Here we go again.
The main street on Folly Beach quieter than usual on a summer night as people prepare for the storm to come.
We have our storm shutters up. We have a lot of sandbags around our house. We've taped. We've moved everything out of the yard. We've tied it down.
Many have left ahead of Florence. Others choosing
Unfortunately, we'll probably be one of the last, waiting behind last-minute goers if we go.
Mark Leon lives on James Island. He says he knows the dangers coastal flooding can bring.
I have lost 2 cars from flooding damage through hurricanes. And so Matthew and Irma were definitely not my friends, but I did stick it through. I survived well, but my cars did not.
Experts predicting a 2 to 4 foot storm surge and possibly 5 to 10 inches of rain, a combination that could mean significant flooding for the area.
We've got a pump, we've got squeegees, we're ready to try to sort of, and I think for days with every high tide, we're probably going to be wrestling it.
People I spoke to saying they're preparing for the worst and hoping for the best.
I am actually praying just for anybody. I just really hope this isn't serious, just anybody that, you know, a big loss is sad. So I just cautiously hopeful.
Access to Folly Beach is officially restricted to residents. That went into place at 8 p.m. and will stay into effect until 24 hours after this storm passes. Reporting live in downtown Charleston tonight, Sophia Zaza, Count on 2.
And there are several citizen information lines for you to call to get additional information about this storm and preparations. Those phone numbers are on your screen right now.
The City of Charleston, City of North Charleston, Berkeley, Dorchester, and Georgetown counties, all available to answer any questions you may have. There are the numbers right there. You can also find more information online. Our website is counton2.com.
And with Hurricane Florence looming, state officials are working tirelessly to make sure that you and your family are safe.
Many agencies are playing key roles behind the scene. The Department of Health and Environmental Control is in the process of assessing dams in the state and evacuating medical patients. So far, more than 1,700 patients have been safely moved from hospitals along the coast. The Department of Social Services is helping coordinate shelter openings. Right now, there are 34 shelters open that can house around 35,000 residents.
During a media briefing today, Governor McMaster spoke on the hurricane plans for more than 20,000 inmates in South Carolina state.
There's some point that no one can go out in a hurricane. So even you could call 911 and call every other number, but you just can't get out of your house to safety. They can't get in to save you. That's why we're urging people to leave from these evacuation zones.
Governor McMaster says those plans could change because the state is planning and operating around the facts and data coming in on Hurricane Florence.
There is a risk of flooding, and Dorchester County is trying to prepare before possible floodwaters. County officials say they'll pre-position emergency crews in flood-prone areas to be able to better respond. The county's Public Works Department has also been out checking and clearing storm drains, canals, and other drainage areas. County Administrator Jason Ward says the county's goal is to prevent blockages in pipes to lessen the risk of flooding.
We're checking all our catch basins and making sure they're cleared. We're actually blowing pipes out to make sure there's no sediment that's in our pipes. So anything we can do that we can go in and make sure that the pipes are clear, we're doing that at this time.
If you see flooding on any roads in Dorchester County during this storm, you're asked to call the county's Hurricane Florence Citizen Hotline.
Berkeley County officials also held a news conference today ahead of Hurricane Florence. Sheriff Dwayne Lewis said that his biggest concern is damage caused from flooding rather than strong wind and Hurricane Florence. While he said he cannot make the decision about whether you need to leave your home, he says there are a few variables you should consider. If your property usually floods, you need to protect yourself and your family. Goose Creek Mayor Greg Habib also talked about the importance of having fresh water on hand.
The water levels in our lake are lower, have been lowered by a couple of feet, giving water more room to move. Our water towers are topped off. We've got more than 3 million gallons in our water system ready to go in case there's a problem there.
Officials say there are emergency assets in place throughout the county made available to those who need them.
If you are planning to evacuate, you are encouraged to do so quickly. The Department of Transportation says South Carolina lane reversals are ending tomorrow. Lanes on Interstate 26 from 526 up to Columbia going back to normal at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. The Highway 501 reversal out to Myrtle Beach, that ends at noon. If you still need help with evacuation routes, you can call the number on your screen. It's 855-GO-SC-DOT.
Storms
All right, once again, recapping the latest news on Hurricane Florence. It has weakened just a little bit more. The winds are 110. It's a Category 2 hurricane. Still moving northwest at 17, roughly about 350 miles to the east of Charleston. Actually, the track really hasn't changed very much except the end of the track. But what has changed is the fact since the storm has weakened, it probably will sit over North Carolina, unfortunately, for a little while, and then moving inland and will weaken to a tropical storm before it moves into South Carolina as a tropical storm and not a hurricane. That's the best news we can give you. The bad news is within the storm, the hurricane hunters tell us the wind field is expanding. Now, hurricane force winds almost 200 miles from the center, and tropical storm force winds about 200 miles from the center. Hurricane force winds about 90 miles from the center. So the storm is, again, getting bigger in terms of the wind field, but it is weakening in terms of its strength. So, again, we'll take every little bit of good news that we can get, but that is certainly good news in terms of the strength of the storm, and we'll just have to wait and see if this is a kind of a temporary shift or a permanent all the way to the coast. Any way you slice it, it's a big storm, guys.
It most certainly
Let that dry air get into the eye.
It's trying. It is trying.
Yeah, okay. Right. Thanks, Rob.
And, of course, we appreciate you spending part of your evening right here with us. We remind you to stay tuned for the very latest by checking out the weather apps.
Now, Count on 2, live and local in the Lowcountry. This is News 2 at 11.
Good evening. I'm Carolyn Murray.
And I'm Brendan Clark. While Hurricane Florence continues to make its way toward the coastline, the Lowcountry, we are all remaining on high alert.
We most certainly are. So let's get straight to the Lowcountry's chief meteorologist, Rob Fowler, who has the very latest on Florence. Rob, you're looking at the latest information.
Yeah, we were chatting off camera. This is good news. We see that weakening trend continuing now as Florence is now down to a Category 2 hurricane, winds of 110, but that's on the high end of Category 2, so very close still to a major hurricane. It is moving northwest at 17, and the pressure is 957 millibar. That has been coming up. Now, some significant changes, not in the track, but in the intensity, because it is weakening, and think it probably will continue to stay as a 2, potentially making landfall as a 2. Then, because it's coming down in strength, it won't take long to weaken. So once it gets over land, instead of a hurricane, which was the last update moving into South Carolina, now officially it's going to be a tropical storm, a strong tropical storm with winds of 70 miles an hour right there on the state line, and that's Friday evening. Then it moves right towards the low country of South Carolina as a tropical storm. Officially the winds at 45 miles an hour, and then it moves off to the northwest as as a tropical depression. So you can see its travel path through the state of South Carolina. But keep in mind now it's going to be moving very, very slowly. So what that means is the impacts will be long lasting here in our state. Here's a look at what's going on. And we kind of talked about this at 10 o'clock on the CW. You kind of see this area here. Well, the eye is very ragged right now. In fact, cloud covered. We understand from our hurricane hunters, only about half the eye is closed. So there's some dry air coming in to the storm, and that's helping to weaken it. But still, the wind field is expanding. The hurricane force winds now about 80 miles from the center, mainly north and east of the center, and the tropical storm force winds have now moved to 195 miles from the center. So that means the wind field is expanding. A lot of folks will be impacted by this. Well, we've been talking about Florence a lot, but a lot of people ask me, how does this compare with some other hurricanes that have impacted the state of North Carolina? Well, you can see Hurricane Hugo that moved through the Charleston area and then moved very quickly up to the north and northeast. Then we had Hazel back in 1954. That impacted North Carolina. And of course, we all remember Hurricane Floyd in 1999. But see, this track is much different, much higher, and going in at a different angle compared to the other storms that have impacted the Tar Heel state of North Carolina. So again, looks like it also will be a Category 2 when it makes landfall. It's not going to turn out to sea. We feel pretty confident about that. The ridge is still steering it off to the north and west. So the most likely scenario is that middle track that will take it into southeastern North Carolina before it bends back into South Carolina. And then we have rain and wind to deal with. I'm going to break down what we can expect coming up for the next few days, especially this weekend. Our impact days, mainly Saturday and Sunday, Brendan and Carolyn, coming up in the full forecast in just a few minutes.
Preparations are underway across the low country as this hurricane moves toward the Carolina shore.
Hundreds of thousands of people heeding warnings and heading away from the coastline, while others are staying put and hoping for the best. News 2's Sophia Arizosa joins us now live with the latest on what people are doing ahead of this storm. Good evening, Sophia.
Good evening, Carolyn and Brendan. The drive through downtown Charleston tonight was eerily
17, and it's really on that path. I mean, there's not much that's going to change the path at this point. I mean, a little minor fluctuation here or there. But I've gotten some questions on Facebook, people asking me, is there any chance that this is going to make some big weird hook and come at us? You know, this is weather. There's always that real tiny chance, but it isn't going to happen. It's going in right into, as we said, Jacksonville to Wilmington, but we are expecting, as it approaches land, it goes from a Category 2 to a Category 1. We're expecting landfall, by the way, around 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. tonight into tomorrow morning. So what a difference it'll be in the fact that it's down from what was a possible high-end Category 3, almost Category 4, making landfall. Then you see that track taking it across South Carolina into Georgia and going back to the west of us. So there's some good news there. Here's a quick look at Futurecast. Clouds will be increasing for us today after some nice morning sunshine. We may have some pop-up showers because we are going to be so humid today. Do note that we are looking at bands of rain starting to develop as we go into tonight and tomorrow morning. And certainly during the day tomorrow into tomorrow night, even though it's of rain over us, and we're talking again about 1 to 3 inches of rain when it's all said and done. So that's quite a difference for sure. Outside this morning, 73 in Glen Allen, 73 in Tuckahoe under clear skies. I expect 74 with sunshine this morning. Warming up today quickly, high clouds this afternoon, turning into a cloudy afternoon and evening. Your 7-day planning forecast. 80 tomorrow with rain and wind, and then we're noticing 83 with some showers still about on Saturday, still some showers on Sunday, but the only alert day this week now is tomorrow, Friday. Back over to you.
As we've been saying, the track of the storm unprecedented. Our entire team is tracking Florence for you. Stay with 8 News and Storm Tracker 8 for the latest on the impacts of an RVA and the Carolina coastline. We're on air and online around the clock. You're watching a special edition of Good Morning Richmond at 4 a.m. This is a live look from the South Carolina coast. This morning quiet now, but soon the winds will begin picking up We have more of our complete Florence coverage coming up for you after the break. It is 4:13 now.
was being asked to stay inside their homes as there is a mandatory curfew as Hurricane Florence continues to barrel down on the North Carolina coast. Now, those who do live and decided to stay are being asked to provide their information to the local police in the event of a disaster. At some point overnight, they are going to start cutting power and water on the island. In Carolina Beach, Holden Kerwicki,
So there you see it. Despite some big changes to the forecast, Shockoe Bottom still taking precautions right now. Sandbags are on standby, ready to go to restaurants and businesses there. Dumpsters also being moved around, plus some drains are being checked to make sure that they are clear and working properly. Even with clear drains, the amount of water in the region could pose some risks.
Our other big problem, other than the actual storm, is how much rain falls in the west of here. And that would be a slow-moving flood that would build up over days.
The Shockoe Bottom Neighborhood Association president, you saw him there, David Napier, says he is preparing because he knows how quickly the forecast can change. He is urging neighbors to move cars to higher ground just in case we do see higher rainfall.
As folks evacuate from the Carolinas and Newport News, hotels in the area have seen an uptake in reservations. We have put calls to several hotels in the area. There are still rooms left, but very few. We're told that the number of reservations quickly went up as the track of Florence became clear. Airbnb also has free rooms for people fleeing the storm.
When evacuating, don't forget about your pets. Storm Tracker 8 reporter Aaron Thomas was at the Richmond Animal Care and Control Center with more on what you need to know about making sure they're safe.
Animal safety officers here at Richmond Animal Care and Control say it's important for evacuees with pets to know what places are indeed pet friendly. That's why it's important to do your research. They tell me it's the first time in Richmond the RACC will be functioning as an emergency shelter for pets. For anyone with four-legged friends trying to escape Hurricane Florence.
Our goal is we're public service and we're here to help people.
Officers and volunteers at Richmond Animal Care and Control offering up shelter space for pets.
We're sitting in a really great spot going into the storm where we have some additional cage space.
Christy Chips Peters says RACC plans to shelter as many animals as possible if the storm hits.
We take every animal in need. So if we come across 20 animals in someone's house, we have to make 20 cages available for those pets.
They're stepping in to keep evacuees from leaving their pets behind.
Never abandon your pet. Honestly, it is a crime. It is something that we do follow up on and take quite seriously here.
The community has offered extra crates and food for RACC in case the facility takes in more than it can handle.
We planned for the worst and hope for the best, and we really are sort of leaning towards the best end, and we hope that it stays there.
The city of Richmond plans to open 2 emergency shelters. One of them, Linwood Holton Elementary, is a pet-friendly shelter. Now, once that place runs out of space, all those animals will have to come here at RACC. And to do your research, we have a link of pet-friendly motels and other shelters posted on our website, WRIC.com. Reporting in Richmond, Aaron Thomas, 8 News.
Now, here's why Governor Northam and area officials are still worried. Now, this year is among the wettest years on record for Richmond. Already, nearly 46 inches of rain has fallen. That's compared to nearly 32 inches of rain that typically falls. And as Napier said, remember he is the president of the Shockoe Bottom Association, if rain falls in the western part of the state, the James River levels could rise, causing serious flooding.
And that is why we are concerned and still keeping an eye on this, even though we've talked about it shifting much further south, which is good news. And we've seen it kind of lose some of its strength this morning. And that is a big, big thing for the Carolina coastline.
Oh, yeah.
It really is. We talked about the storm surge, talked about the tidal effects. We talked about all of that. But when it comes down to it, when you look at the fact that it's not a Category 4 making landfall, it's a Category 2, maybe a 1 by landfall. It's like almost a sigh of relief because the Outer Banks of Carolinas have had Category 1s before. They know how to deal with it, and it won't be as destructive. I'm not diminishing this by
Still take it seriously,
100%.
though. But you're right. Because there's a huge difference between a 4 and a 1.
Absolutely. 4 is catastrophic. 4 is, Andrew, it's Hugo, it's, Katrina was a 3, so we saw things like that. So keep that in mind. But again, this possibly being a 1, I'm not saying you let the guard down because there's going to be huge flooding beside the tidal concerns. Let's break things down for you. All right, first of all, Florence is going to make landfall after midnight tonight, early tomorrow morning, between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. For us here in Central Virginia, Friday is going to be a rainy day. Really, it's not going to be any worse than some rainy days we've had in the past. Think about a nasty March rainy day when you get the rain and the wind, because that's what we're looking for. We're going to have winds out of the northeast, 15 to 25 miles per hour. I want to talk about that in a second. Gusts could be 35 to 40. That's really it. So, you know, I mean, if schools are thinking, hey, maybe we should cancel, I'm going to advise against it because it's just a general rainy day. That's my personal opinion. I have no say in it. This is important, though. I want to talk a little about these winds here. Northeast 15 to 20. All week long, we've had northeast winds coming across the Chesapeake Bay, pushing water, increasing the tidal surge against our northern neck friends, against the Rappahannock, and also into the York River, into the Middle Peninsula. And they've had some localized flooding issues from tidal effects. That will continue through the weekend and possibly get a bit worse because of those winds. So please be mindful of that. Now, total rainfall from tomorrow, or really early in the morning tomorrow, through Saturday, 1 to maybe on the high end, 3 inches. And that's really about it. Sunday, some clouds, some sun, pretty tropical, and some showers will be around as well. Hurricane Florence has winds 110 miles per hour moving to the northwest at 17. You can see the clouds now stretching into eastern Carolina. We are going to be looking at a landfall somewhere near Wilmington, so let's bring up the track, and we are waiting for that new information to come in. It comes in about 15 to 20 minutes by 4:45 typically. This storm pushing to the northwest will begin to make that slight turn due west later tonight. And you see we go from a Category 2 to a Category 1. Let's slide in here, and that Category 1 is just at or after landfall. Again, we're thinking landfall around 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning, and that tick mark there is Friday morning, 8 a.m., 90-mile-per-hour winds. Then it's a tropical storm, and notice it's dropping southwest into central South Carolina toward Columbia. Then it goes into Georgia as a tropical depression and into Kentucky as a tropical depression next week. Using Futurecast, kind of the same thing. 1 o'clock this afternoon, you can see the clouds over us. We're going to be looking at this storm very close to land by 7 o'clock tonight. Certainly the effects will be felt with rain and wind really picking up across coastal Carolina. Now we're inland at 7:30 tomorrow morning. Bands of rain into central Virginia. But notice we're really away from the core of the rain. Rain continues Friday night for us into early Saturday. And then as Florence begins to drive into South Carolina, our rain lessens quite a bit during the day on Saturday. That's why we're only talking about 1 to 2 inches, maybe 3 inches of rain on the high side for some of you, because it is a tropical rain, so you can squeeze out just a little bit of extra moisture. Talking about those winds here, you can see those winds, again, today into tomorrow, 15 to 25, and there will be some higher gusts, but all coming out of the northwest. So again, watch out for tidal concerns across the northern neck and middle peninsula and into our rivers like the Rappahannock, maybe like the York, and even the James. This morning, it is a mucky one. We're sitting at 72 in Windham, 73 in Lakeside, 72 in Matoaca, and 74 in Colonial Heights. Let's break down that forecast. Sunshine this morning, 74. Sunshine at 10 o'clock and 78. High clouds rolling in at noon. And then more clouds this afternoon with a high today of 85. The rest of your 7-day planning forecast. Tomorrow, a rainy and windy day, a high of 80. As we go into Saturday, showers, because we're going to see that rain starting to taper off. Otherwise, cloudy. Sunday, mostly cloudy, some breaks of sun, 83. Monday, Tuesday, partly sunny, chance of a shower or storm, 85. You're watching Good Morning Richmond. We'll be right back.
Thanks for joining us for Good Morning Richmond, another half hour. You just saw we had some special coverage this morning at 4 o'clock. Thanks for joining us. I'm Morgan Dean. We have Storm Tracker 8 team coverage for you this morning. We have an awful lot to talk about today. Look at all the folks that are up early working for you. We have 3 Storm Tracker 8 meteorologists on standby here in the studio. Storm Tracker 8 reporter Ty Cunningham is in Chesterfield. Sierra Fox has the latest on storm preps at the state level. Want to start, though, with Storm Tracker 8 meteorologist Matt DiNardo with the latest on Hurricane Florence. We've talked about good news throughout the week, Matt, with it moving away from Virginia. Now we're talking about a lesser impact on the Carolina coast, and that is good.
And that's because we're talking about a lower storm magnitude, if you will, right? This is now a Category 2 storm, winds 110 miles per hour. Perhaps when you went to bed last night, it was still a Category 3 if you went to bed early. That change came at about, or started to come at about 11 o'clock last night, going down to a 2, and it remains a 2 early this morning. In fact, here's even the better news. We don't expect it to strengthen at all. In fact, it may hold strength, and as we approach land, it may come down just a bit. Now, you see that 1 there. That's just after landfall. We expect landfall will be about 2 a.m. to 3 a.m., and landfall is defined when the eye comes on shore. That's the official definition. Of course, the effects will be felt much ahead of that. In fact, some of the effects are being felt right now along the Carolina coastline. Then it becomes a tropical storm by Friday evening, but notice that track taking it into South Carolina, into Georgia, and then moving away by the end of the weekend and early next week as a tropical depression. Notice where we are, way away from this. And I get a lot of questions on Facebook in the past 24 to 48 hours. Hey, Matt, this track shifted so far south, which is great, but is there any chance that something, wonky could happen and it makes a run back at us? No, the tracks are pretty set, which is great. So we're happy that we won't see that. Now, what about the impacts here? Today, we'll have sunshine followed by increasing clouds. After midnight tonight, we'll start to see some rain pushing on in, and rain will be steady at times throughout the day tomorrow into Saturday. And when it's all said and done, because at this point Sunday morning, it's down into South Carolina and moving away, 1 to 2, maybe 3 inches of rain across central Virginia. More to the south, much less to the north, the farther you are away from that storm. We will have winds during the day tomorrow today winds will be out of the northeast at about 10 to 15, but tomorrow into early Saturday winds will be out of the northeast at 15 to 25 miles per hour with gusts 35 to 40. Really, tomorrow is just an average rainy, windy day like you'd have in March, except it won't be in the 40s or 50s. It's going to be around 80, so it'll be pretty humid as well, but not really terrible weather. We lucked out, okay? We really, really lucked out. 73, because you remember what we were looking at last week and early this week. 73 right now in Ashland, looking at 72 over to Windham, 71 in Gayton Elementary School, 73 in Lakeside. Low 70s across the Swift Creek area of Chesterfield County. Breaking down that forecast today, a nice sunny start, 74 degrees. By the lunch hour, high clouds rolling in quickly. Partly sunny to mostly cloudy this afternoon with a high of 85. And again, rain developing later tonight, probably after midnight. 4:33 now. Let's continue our coverage on Hurricane Florence.
And folks are preparing around the clock, working to make sure that everyone stays safe during Hurricane Florence.
Storm Tracker 8 news reporter Talia Cunningham live at the Emergency Operations Center at State Police Headquarters in Chesterfield County with more on what's happening there. Talia.
Hey, Katie, Morgan, good morning. Well, it's all hands on deck. Even this early this morning, I've seen people coming from out or inside that bunker down below, coming out to take a little bit of a break because they've been working around the clock, as you mentioned. You see that big bus parked right here because federal, state, and local agencies will reconvene as a big group a little bit later on this morning, fine-tuning their plans for Hurricane Florence. Now, talking with them, they do tell me that although the storm has shifted and is downgraded, the biggest area of concern right now is the Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach area because of flooding. Let's show you the inside of this bunker. You can see it's basically a big think tank where agencies like FEMA, the Virginia National Guard, and the Department of Public Health have been gathering since Monday. Now, everyone is in one room to communicate, make those very important response decisions, and advise the governor on the status of resources. So the goal is to keep everybody safe and out of harm's way. They're working out plans from everything like where to put up shelters to evacuation plans.
What we want to tell folks, though, is they really need to expect services to be interrupted, roads to be closed, power to be out for days or weeks after this storm. We shouldn't take it lightly.
Now, right now, these agencies are still in the preparation phase. Once Hurricane Florence hits, they'll move to response and then recovery, which, depending on how bad it is, it could take several months. So definitely still a lot of concerns for the team this morning. They're going to have several more briefings throughout the morning. We'll be sure to bring you those updates here on 8 News. Right now, live in Chesterfield, Talia Cunningham, 8 News.
Okay, thank you, Talia. We have some schools that are closed today. VCU does not have class today or tomorrow. Virginia Union closes at noon today. Randolph-Macon also closed now through Sunday. Prince George County schools are closed today as well. Most major school districts, including Richmond, Hanover, and Richmond, and Henrico, Hanover, Richmond, and Henrico all closed tomorrow. Chesterfield has not yet made a decision. Stay with 8 News. We'll continue to update those. Governor Northam's evacuation order earlier this week affected 245,000 Virginians.
Yesterday, he briefed the public again on statewide storm prep. Storm Tracker 8 reporter Sierra Fox has the latest on those storm prep. Sierra?
Governor Northam says even though the storm has drastically changed directions, everyone needs to stay alert. Even if you're not on the coast, this storm will affect you. Virginia's Department of Emergency Management is keeping a close eye on the storm's potential impact.
This storm remains a threat to Virginia.
Governor Northam says the state is maintaining a mandatory evacuation order to Zone A. This includes Virginia's low-lying coastal areas in Hampton Roads and the Eastern Shore.
If you're already out of harm's way, please stay there.
Keeping all Virginians safe is the top priority for the governor and his staff.
And the storm has been unpredictable. We also did not want to stop the evacuation and bring people back in if those winds prevented safe travel on the highways or forced the closure of any of our bridges and tunnels.
Virginia is prepared for the worst. The state has 59 local shelters open or scheduled to open. They also have 2 state-managed shelters at Christopher Newport University and the College of William and Mary.
I'd remind Virginians that the time to prepare is now. Florence remains a serious storm, and I urge everyone to take steps to remain safe.
President Trump has granted a disaster declaration for Virginia. This allows the Commonwealth to get federal money and resources. Governor Northam says the president was quick to approve it. Reporting in Richmond, Sierra Fox, 8 News.
The pressure is on to help some of our most vulnerable citizens in our VA, the homeless population. A community-wide effort is underway to get those folks shelter before Hurricane Florence hits. Outreach coordinators teamed up with Richmond Police yesterday, walking up and down the river and going under this bridge, urging folks in tent communities to seek higher ground. They even offered them a ride to the shelter. 577 people in the greater Richmond area are believed to be homeless. They have been asked to expand capacity in this emergency. If you or anyone you know needs shelter, there is a crisis line that you can call. That number is 804-972-0813. And I'm here in the Storm Tracker 8 Weather Center with Matt DiNardo and Michelle Morgan. We have a team of 3 meteorologists all on staff keeping you up to date with all of the latest tracks here of Hurricane Florence. Again, it has downgraded significantly, not only for our area, but the impacts even to the Carolinas. They are not out of the clear. I really want to emphasize that. Correct. But compared to the catastrophic winds that we were forecasting not too long ago, there is some good news there, right?
There is some good news, isn't there, Michelle?
There is. Even though this storm has lessened in intensity, we should not keep our guard down. We could still see storm surge, hurricane force winds in many areas.
Yep. And the bigger problem might be the flooding,
right,
which
absolutely.
is what they saw with Hurricane Matthew just a few years ago. Some places like Wilmington could see 15, 16, 17 inches of rain. In fact, I brought up this rainfall graphic for you. Again, you look at the stark difference with this system passing to our south by, let's say, 200 miles, right? The center of the storm, maybe a little bit more than that. And you look at Wilmington, over 16.5 inches, roughly speaking. Raleigh-Durham, possibly a foot of rain. There will be some places that will have locally 25 to 30 inches of rain in this white. And while we're sitting here with 1.62, and that's through Monday morning. Most of us, by the way, from tonight through Saturday, probably about 1.5 inches to 2.5 inches. We get a little bit more with some kick-up showers on Sunday. But that's a big difference there. All right, here is the latest on Florence. Still waiting for the new stuff to come on in. Winds 110 miles per hour, moving to the west-northwest at 17. We are expecting a landfall near Wilmington, North Carolina, around 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. tonight. And it maybe is a Category 1 storm, as this may weaken just before it comes down land, or comes on land, I should say, and then goes into South Carolina. All right, 85 today, increase the clouds. Rainy, windy tomorrow, winds 15 to 25 miles per hour, and then 83 as we go into Saturday with clouds and showers tapering off, maybe a pop-up shower to Sunday. You're watching Good Morning Richmond. We'll be right back.
The storm surge still rolls ashore. All those big waves. There were wave heights of 80 feet to 90 feet to the northeastern side of this storm yesterday morning. And that swell energy is pummeling the coast of North Carolina right now. Moving to the northwest at 17, max winds are at 110, pressures at 956. There's our hurricane making landfall sometime late today or tonight, most likely tomorrow morning somewhere around Wilmington. And then the storm will begin to drift to the southwest, either right off the coast of North Carolina into South Carolina or over the PD into South Carolina. But I will tell you what this track means. And remember yesterday when everybody was focused on that offshore track of the European and then coming in near Charleston, I'm not saying that's not going to happen, but the National Hurricane Center's track here, this is the most logical track. This makes the most sense. Not saying it can't drift farther south, but even if it does, you can't focus on the center because the impacts are going to be the same. All that would do is maybe give us a little bit more wind. The big threat here is rain, rain, rain. I can't say it enough. This is a perfect setup for a significant flooding event across the state of South Carolina, and this one could go in the record books. Here's what to expect. Tidal flooding and surge, some damaging surf and erosion, and dangerous rip currents today. Those will end a bit later today through tomorrow before possibly returning over the weekend, depending on the track of the storm. But this is the big deal, and of course it drops out right when I wanted to show it. This is it. Significant the state of South Carolina. These areas in gray, that gray line right there is the 10-inch line, 30 inches. Big deal, okay? And as we look at hurricane force wind probabilities across the low country, you can see they are not substantially high. Less than 10% for most of us. You get up toward Murrells Inlet, some good news for you. Yesterday, your wind probability for hurricane force winds was close to 50%. That has dropped this morning. And the tropical storm force wind probabilities have dropped as well. And remember, we talked about this yesterday. This just knocks the message home even more. The threat here is water. It is not wind. There will be some wind, and it will be enough to probably cause some power outages. But the greatest threat to life and property in South Carolina, outside of, let's say, the Grand Strand area, will be from flooding. All right, here's what's going on right now. Most of us are quiet. We're sitting in the mid-70s. It is going to be a hot day today, all right? Radar not showing anything this morning, and I think this is going to be dry. Remember earlier in the week, we talked about Thursday possibly being one of those severe clear days, and our high-resolution forecast model is pretty much showing that. Just a few passing clouds. Now, the clouds could thicken up a bit late this afternoon into this evening, but most of us will be dry, and look at those offshore winds through the night tonight and into the day tomorrow. Now, by tomorrow, some outer rain bands could begin to impact Georgetown, Williamsburg counties by noon. And then those could spread farther south as we head into the afternoon and evening hours. And then the brunt of the storm arrives for us during the day Saturday. And that's reflected here on the Low Country's only 10-day outlook. Today and tomorrow, essentially dry. I can't rule out a stray shower, but boy, is it going to be hot. Highs near 90. It's going to be breezy today and tomorrow, and just plain old windy by late tomorrow through Saturday and Sunday. Monday, still some lingering rain potential. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday will be in the mid to upper 80s. And our next threat for rain could come next weekend, but at this point, we're not even worried about that. We got to get through the next couple of days. Laura Smith, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Josh. Good morning to you. Barely any cars on the road here this morning. That lane reversal on I-26 still in effect, and that will be in effect until 6 here tonight. 501 lane reversal will end at noon, according to DOT. Drive times look good headed to westbound out of here. 526 to Jedburgh is a 30-minute ride for you, all green across the map. Somerville to Harleyville is a 22-minute commute for you, and downtown to Somerville, 19 minutes here at 4:49. A live look at the Don Holt Bridge. I don't see one car there on 526, which traffic is moving in both directions.
City of North Charleston officials, police officers, firefighters spread out across the city to make sure that those who are choosing not to evacuate are as prepared as possible. City officials have a list of homes and neighborhoods that consistently flood, and they delivered sandbags to those residents yesterday. Mayor Keith Summey among those helping make those deliveries to make sure that people know about the possible impacts.
You know, in times like this, people feel insecure. We need to make them feel as secure as possible.
They delivered the sandbags in Union Heights, Pepper Hill, and Elms Plantation.
State officials are working tirelessly to keep us safe here in South Carolina. The Department of Health and Environmental Control is in the process of assessing dams in the state and evacuating medical patients. So far, more than 1,700 patients have been safely moved from hospitals along the coast. Governor McMaster is still pleading with residents to leave the state to protect themselves.
There's some point that no one can go out in a hurricane. So even you could call 911 and call every other number, but just like you can't get out of your house to safety, they can't get in to save you. That's why we're urging people to leave from these evacuation zones.
Governor McMaster says those plans could change because the state is planning and operating around the facts and data coming in on Hurricane Florence.
Next on News 2.
More Hurricane Florence coverage you can count on next.
to get out. Remember, although this hurricane is weakening, that it is still a very large and powerful storm. Sandbags are an effective flood prevention technique. We talk about them being available all the time, but if they're not filled or stacked properly, they're not going to work. Bags should be halfway or 2/3 of the way full. And when you lay them out, you should think of it like you're laying down bricks. Put down the first layer and they should be packed tightly together and flat. Building your second layer on top of that, the bags should be about a half step off from each other so that you see it like you see it right there. You don't have the seams all in one place. That way it fills in those gaps and the water can't get through.
If you leave it untucked and open, if the water is coming the wrong direction, and it can get into the sandbag and wash away the sand. So you want to make sure that you've secured that flap.
You can also tuck the open side under the bag next to the one that you're packing it to right here. You see how they're doing it? And that'll help create a good tight seal.
Next on News 2.
Count on 2 for the most up-to-date track on Hurricane Florence as we continue to monitor this storm as it makes its approach to the Carolina coast.
And when we come back, more coverage on Florence and the impact we're expecting here in the Lowcountry.
Keep them safe. So during the storm, they say they may be limited in what they can do to help. This morning, they're asking everyone to stay out of the water, not to go out on a boat, and to stay off of the beach until it's safe to do so. And over in Virginia Beach, officials have opened the doors to their first emergency shelter ahead of Florence. Folks have continued to trickle in since it opened late last night. One woman is no stranger to flooding where she lives. She says 2 years ago during Hurricane Matthew, her neighborhood was underwater and a lot of her neighbors lost everything.
There's about maybe 4 or 5 ways into the neighborhood. Each and every one flooded last time a hurricane came through, and there was no way in, no way out.
Virginia Beach is opening another shelter at 8 o'clock this morning. That shelter will allow folks to bring their pets. More than 25 shelters have already opened or are opening later today in the Hampton Roads area.
One local group is calling in more volunteers to make sure those who can't make it to the store don't go hungry during Florence. Feed More is a volunteer group based out of Central Virginia. They're making sure that the needy stay fed once the storm hits. They're prepping meals with fruit and milk in boxes and will be delivering them throughout the weekend.
These folks make decisions every day between transportation, utilities, food purchases, and to put a storm in the middle of this upsets a pretty fragile balance they live within anyway. So it's our absolute obligation to make sure that the last thing they have to worry about is being fed.
Feed More will also be preparing more than 200 meals for 2 emergency shelters that the city of Richmond plans on opening up later today and possibly throughout the weekend. Hurricane Florence can now be blamed for a bunch of canceled weddings across the Central Virginia area. Not what you want to hear when you're a bride. Heartbroken brides and grooms have spent months planning the perfect celebration of their love, only to have it canceled because of the threat of high winds and the possibility of torrential rains. One woman and her fiance were supposed to tie the knot on Saturday at a rustic cabin in Pocahontas State Park, but the park closed for the storm, so now their wedding is off.
We knew it was a possibility it was going to close down, but we really didn't think it was going to happen. So I was just devastated.
Her fiance is a firefighter who has to put in his vacation requests a year in advance, so she's not sure when their wedding can be rescheduled. We have much more news ahead here on Good Morning Richmond. Here's some of the stories you'll see coming up during our 5 o'clock hour today. Evacuation still underway this morning ahead of Hurricane Florence. What folks who made their way to Richmond have to say about leaving their homes and possessions behind. And Florence is forcing many universities and school districts in our area and across the region to close. We'll tell you which ones they're not going to be opening their doors over the next couple of days. That's coming up in just a moment. Talia?
And it is back to the bunker this morning for first responders and state agencies as they put their final touches on their plans for Hurricane Florence. I'll have all the details next.
You're watching an 8 News special report, Tracking Florence.
Coming up on 5 o'clock now on our special coverage here on Good Morning Richmond. Thanks for joining us. We have complete coverage of Hurricane Florence here this morning. I'm Morgan Dean. Team coverage for you this morning with Storm Tracker 8 meteorologist Katie Dupree and Michelle Morgan, keeping an eye on what folks along the North Carolina coast can expect in terms of flooding. And Storm Tracker 8 reporters Tyree Cunningham and Aaron Thomas talking about how Florence will be affecting us a little closer to home here. But first, we need to get right to Storm Tracker 8 meteorologist Matt Gennardo with the latest on Hurricane Florence and some signs that things are getting a little bit better before this makes landfall, right, Matt?
A little bit better, and let's talk about that. Good morning, everybody. Here is what we're looking at now. As of 5 a.m., Hurricane Florence is a Category 2 storm. It became a Category 2 storm last night, weakening throughout the day yesterday. 110 miles per hour, moving to the northwest at 15. You could see some of the extreme outer bands of rain just getting into, let's say, Cape Hatteras, maybe down to Ocracoke. Certainly the clouds now into southeastern Virginia. This is a fairly large storm. The effects will be felt across North Carolina, portions of Virginia, including us, and down across South Carolina. Let's give you the latest track. As we said, winds 110 miles per hour. During the course of today, it is going to approach the Carolina coastline and remain a Category 2 storm. You see winds 110 at 2 o'clock this afternoon, 105 at 2 a.m., and this is really just before landfall. And then once we see landfall around 2 a.m. to, let's say, 3 a.m., we immediately see that go down. You can see we are just on the cusp of this crossing through Wilmington, North Carolina around 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. Again, once we're inland, we remove it from the warm ocean water, from its energy source, so it begins to weaken. Florence will then drive southwestward as a tropical storm during Friday night, Saturday, Sunday. Look at this. We're now into Georgia and then almost as we round the bend up into Kentucky. So there may not be much of a backlash for us. I will say, though, we will remain rather humid through the next couple of days into next week. So even when Florence isn't around, it's still going to be a pop-up storm possibility, so to speak. But rain develops tonight after midnight. Steady tomorrow, steady into Saturday morning. Total rainfall we're looking at 1 to 2 to 3 inches on the high side. So definitely rainy for Friday into Saturday, so keep that in mind. Hurricane Florence is wrapping things up for you. Makes landfall, again, 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. A rainy Friday into Saturday and windy. Winds out of the northeast, 15 to 20 miles per hour, some gusts up to 40. Total rainfall Friday into Saturday, 1 to 3 inches of rain. And Sunday, some clouds, some sun, but because we're tropical, hours as well. Let's continue our coverage on Hurricane Florence, and Michelle Morgan is with us now talking about the effects along the Outer Banks, an area which will get hit harder than us.
Thanks so much, Matt. Many Virginians vacation in Kitty Hawk area, Nags Head, and we'll see the brunt of the storm in those areas as well as heavy downpours, continuous heavy rainfall in those areas. So flooding is likely. So we can see many areas flooded out, and not only flooded out, many roads impassable, many structures, structural damage, roofs blown off of many buildings. So again, we're looking at devastating conditions as this storm approaches the area. So again, many roads impassable, and again, roadway signs blown over. So we're looking at debris in a lot of areas, and you can see here highlighted in the red under a hurricane warning. So on top of the flooding, again, we're looking at possibly historic rainfall in many areas, between 6 even 10 inches along the coast here. So again, as this storm approaches the area, cannot let our guard down, because flooding, storm surge, and even hurricane force winds in many areas where Virginians vacation. So we're going to go ahead and send it over to Katie as she explains storm surge.
And again, speaking of that, that is just one of the threats, and really, in a lot of cases, it seems to be the biggest threat from a hurricane. A lot of people kind of forget that storm surge is such a big threat as it is. They think about the extreme winds that are damaging for a lengthy amount of time. Certainly that's a threat, along with the heavy rainfall, but storm surge. Let's explain that and talk about exactly how this happens. So normal sea level, we have high tide. The water comes up a little bit, but there's no flooding, right? Well, storm surge happens when those hurricane force winds come on land and quite literally slosh up the water that is in the ocean onto the land. Now, storm surge has nothing to do with the amount of rain coming from the hurricane. It is in addition to. So, you know, all those factors coming together, there's a trifecta of things that are a danger in a hurricane. That storm surge, it can come up quite a bit to flood, as Michelle mentioned, those roads, but then a lot farther inland as well. Depends on how strong it is. Now, getting to talking about Wilmington, North Carolina, that's about the area that we're expecting Hurricane Florence to make landfall. And look at this. The National Hurricane Center storm surge potential is actually maybe not quite as high as you would expect. Still could be devastating, greater than 3 feet above sea level in some instances. But remember, because the eye of the hurricane is weak, we don't see quite the storm surge as, say, areas north of it would when they get the full brunt of hurricane force winds coming on land for a longer period of time. Notice this, New Bern, we heard a little clip from them earlier because they are in between those two rivers, the Neuse River and the Pamlico River. They saw historic flooding from other occasions. They could see the same thing, possibly more than 9 feet above the ground, that storm surge. Morgan.
5:06 now. Emergency officials are preparing, working around the clock now to make sure that everyone across the Commonwealth stays safe during Hurricane Florence. Storm Tracker 8 reporter Talia Cunningham is live at the Emergency Operations Center at State Police Headquarters in Chesterfield with what's happening right now. Good morning, Talia.
Good morning, Morgan. It is an all-hands-on-deck situation here this morning and really has been all week. Later on throughout the morning, state, local, and federal agencies will all reconvene to fine-tune their planning for Hurricane Florence once it makes landfall. Now, they tell me that right now, the biggest concern in our area in the state of Virginia is the Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach area for that coastal flooding. Let's show you this down-under bunker here at State Police Headquarters. It's basically a big think tank where agencies like FEMA, the National Guard, and the Department of Public Health have been gathering all week. Now, everyone is in one room to communicate, make those important decisions, and advise the governor on the status of resources available. So obviously the goal is to keep everybody safe and out of harm's way. They're working out plans from everything where to put up shelters to evacuation plans. Right now, these agencies are still in the preparation phase. Once Hurricane Florence hits, they will then move to the response phase, and then they could move into recovery, which, depending on how bad this is, it could take several months. Now, I've been talking with some workers out here this morning. They will have one big briefing this morning and several smaller ones throughout the day. We'll be sure to keep you updated here on 8 News. Right now, live in Chesterfield, Talia Cunningham, 8 News.
5:07 now. Governor Northam is keeping the Zone A evacuation in place, and that means heavier traffic on I-64 as folks continue to evacuate. Our crews caught up with people passing through Richmond from Hampton Roads and the Carolinas. Some had to end vacations early. Others had to pick up and leave their homes.
Our apartment's on the line between Zone A and C, and we've seen what minor flooding, tidal flooding can do, and we agree that it's better to be safe than sorry.
If people start to evacuate today, they might hit some snags with train and air travel. Schedules for those should start to be affected soon.
We have some schools that are closed today because of Florence. VCU does not have class today or tomorrow. Virginia Union closes its doors at noon today. Randolph-Macon also closed now through Sunday. Prince George County schools are closed today as well. Most major school districts, including Richmond, Hanover, and Henrico, are all closed tomorrow. There's one name on that list of the major school districts we didn't mention, though. Chesterfield County has not yet made a decision about tomorrow. Keep it here on 8 News. We have those closings for you at WRIC.com. They are also running at the bottom of your screen.
Now, we've been doing, of course, extended hurricane coverage here, but we've been talking about the big impacts where that storm has shifted south and where it's going to be hit the hardest. But of course, you know, people are tuning in this morning and saying, okay, so we're not getting the worst of the storm, but what are we going to be seeing here?
And so let's break that down. We've been tracking Florence, and we know that it's going to make landfall later tonight around after midnight, say 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. as a Category 2, trending to Category 1, which is great news. Again, still a big storm for sure. For us here, it's the second line. Rainy, windy day on Friday. We're going to have winds out of the northeast at 15 to 25 miles per hour. Some gusts 35 to 40 during Friday into Saturday. Total rainfall, what are we expecting? 1 to 3 inches of rain. That's really not too bad, all things considered. We may have some very minor flooding, but that's about it. And Sunday, as Florence pulls into South Carolina and away, we'll have some clouds, some sunshine, but because the air around us will be tropical, we may pop up some showers as well. Well, I want to talk about those winds, and this is just a great graphic here. Again, we're looking at the potential for some areas with that northeast wind to push water up our rivers and against the northern neck and middle peninsula. We're not talking about high storm surge potential or in terms of big time flooding, but there will be some tidal flooding issues. You know, we couple that together, pushing the water up the James. You may have greater than a foot above ground. Also the York or even the Rappahannock River. You may have some concerns. Areas that have seen this all week will see that again as we go through this weekend, especially Friday into Saturday. Take a look. Again, winds 110 miles per hour moving to the northwest at 15. We are expecting landfall, as I mentioned, around 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. Category 2 at 2 a.m. just off the coast. And then Category 1 well inland. So there we are, again, right across Wilmington. And then that push down, as I was mentioning, into South Carolina, taking it away from us here. Your entire 7-day planning forecast. Today's a quiet day. Sunshine this morning as you head to work or school. Clouds increase, 85 degrees. Tomorrow, rainy, windy, 80. Saturday, we're looking at clouds and some light rain, 83. Sunday, clouds and some sunshine, maybe a pop-up shower, 83. Next week, warm and humid, maybe some late-day storms Monday, Tuesday. You're watching Good Morning Richmond. We will be right back.
Going to be pulled a little farther north, and it's going to have more of a tendency to drift inland. And that's why I wasn't quite ready to buy that yesterday. It just didn't make sense. Well, here we are this morning with a much weaker storm, a much larger storm, and what's going to happen is it's just going to drift west-southwest, most likely over the PD into the Midlands. And what that means for us is a ton of rain.
Yeah, this isn't the all clear.
Right.
Oh, no, absolutely not. In fact, this could be worse because it's going to have such a larger footprint.
With the flooding.
And the rain has been our concern all along because of the slow movement. So let's show you what's going on. We don't need to be backing down on this thing. Today, take your time to prepare for the potential of one of the most Now, we still don't know the exact location of where the heaviest rain will set up, but our threat's now sliding into the moderate category for flooding rain, and I'm waiting on the guidance from the Weather Prediction Center in Maryland. This is the National Center for Environmental Prediction. They're going to be sending out some flooding guidance here shortly, and I'm still going through a lot of the stuff that came out with a 5 o'clock package, so you just have to give me a second. Once we get an idea of what's in there, we may elevate this flooding potential. But for now, I did go ahead and do it one step, but we may have to take it all the way to the top of the scale. I just want to see what they're looking at. Tidal flooding, still an issue, we think, through today, at least through this morning. This morning's high tide, but after that, the offshore winds should cease that. Also, high surf, that's going to be going down through the day. I just looked at some of the surf charts out there. Right now, we're getting 8 to 10 foot breakers well overhead along the coast. Those are going to be going down and crashing through the day today. In fact, surf height tomorrow could be as low as 2 to 4 feet because it's being blown apart by those offshore winds. Rip current risk, though, will remain high because of the swell energy. So here's the bottom line. That offshore wind today ends tidal flooding for now. Then the worst weather arrives Saturday and Sunday with significant flooding and high winds possible over the weekend. More of a flooding threat than high wind. Again, one more time, more of a flooding threat than high wind. I'm not saying there won't be zero wind issues, because there will be, but this is going to be a rain maker. And look at this monster on satellite, a huge storm that is going to barrel right into North Carolina here over the next 24 hours. And based off of what we're seeing with the latest track from the National Hurricane Center, the storm moving to the northwest at 15 miles per hour. It is now due east of Charleston. Max winds at 110, the pressure's at 956. What's happening right now with the storm is that very tight core has expanded, that wind field has expanded. It now begins to feel the upper level winds that like to drift it to the north. And the National Hurricane Center has adjusted the track, essentially discounting now the European solution, which would take the storm down into South Carolina, actually taking it near North Carolina, then turning it south and moving it back into the South Carolina coast. Can't completely rule that out, but either way, it really doesn't matter. The most sense would go right across Wilmington area and then down into the PD or Grand Strand and drifting through, let's say, Berkeley County, Williamsburg County, back toward Orangeburg into the Midlands by the time we get to Sunday and Monday. So it's going to be one of those very, very, very long weekends. Just be ready for it. It's going to be pretty grueling out there because of the rain and the wind. It's just going to seem like it's never going to stop. All of our computer models are in firm agreement this morning. So here's what you can expect. Still some coastal impacts through the week and into the weekend. They're going to lower a bit today and tomorrow because of that offshore wind. But then as we move towards Saturday and Sunday, that could change as the storm moves more to our west. Florence's rainfall potential is quite significant. We're talking the likelihood somewhere in South Carolina of 2 feet or more of rain. We're going to see the likelihood of at least 10 inches of rain around where the center of the storm tracks. And you can see that basically looks like Wilmington area down through the PD, even into parts of the low country, and then back into the Midlands with another maximum of rainfall of 8 to 10 inches back here on the eastern facing slopes of the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina and down into the Greenville-Spartanburg metro. Hurricane force wind probabilities have gone down based off of the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center, down to 29% for Murrells Inlet. For perspective, yesterday at this time, Murrells Inlet, your probability was close to 50%. That's due to the slightly farther north position of the storm and the slightly weaker storm. The rest of us here in the low country, our probabilities are essentially less than 20%. Now, tropical storm force wind probabilities, most likely in the form of gusts, that has still remained on the high side, ranging from near 100% in Murrells Inlet to about 60 to 70% for the rest of the area. That includes Walterboro, 60 to 65% chance that you see tropical storm force gusts most likely over the weekend. So this isn't going to be a totally windless event, but it's going to be more rain than anything else. The amount of rain that we see in the state of South Carolina is going to be staggering by the end of the weekend based off of what we see right now. As you make preps today, we're starting out in the 70s. Through the day, it's going to be fairly dry. Offshore winds allowing the air to sink. We're going to see a good mix of sun and clouds. The sky, when you do see sun today, that color of blue is going to be gorgeous. It's going to be this bright cobalt blue thanks to the tropical air around the hurricane. But then late this afternoon, it looks like the cloud cover will start to increase, and that will be with us into the day tomorrow as our hurricane lashes the coast of North Carolina and begins to drift across southeastern North Carolina and northeastern South Carolina. And here we are Friday at 4 p.m. It looks like the core of the storm is going to be somewhere around the South Carolina-North Carolina line, and the first signs of rain begin to move south down into the low country, and then it just lets loose as we head towards Saturday and Sunday with widespread significant rainfall expected, and it's going to be a wind-driven rain too Saturday and Sunday. The rain will linger into Monday and potentially even into Tuesday before we clear out for next week. Once we get through this weekend, look at next week. Wednesday and Thursday, bright sunshine, a high of 85, and we'll be in the mid-80s by Friday and Saturday most likely. And along the coast, we're going to be in the upper 80s to, or low to mid 80s, I should say, under a mainly sunny sky.
We'll take it, Josh. 5:19, good morning to you. If you're getting ready to hit the road, maybe you're leaving town this morning, you're in the clear in terms of drive times because we are moving just fine. 526 to Jedburgh will take you 31 minutes and 22 minutes here from Somerville to Harleyville. That is on I-26 westbound. Keep in mind, lane reversal still in effect. So all lanes are headed westbound towards Columbia, and that lasts all the way to the Charlotte interchange, I-77. Now, the lane reversal will end tonight at 6 p.m. The Myrtle Beach Road 501 will end today at noon. A live look at our DOT camera. This is the harbor. Looking beautiful and nice this morning.
Next on News 2.
Hurricane Florence getting closer to the Carolina coastline.
More hurricane coverage when we come back.
Despite some changes to the forecast that we've watched happen over the past couple of days, Chaco Bottom still taking precautions ahead of Hurricane Florence. Doesn't take much for them to flood down there. Sandbags are on standby, ready to go for restaurants and businesses. Dumpsters also being moved around down there, plus drains being checked one more time just to make sure that they are clear and working properly. Even with the clear drains, the amount of water in the region could pose some potential risks for folks there.
Our other big problem, other than the actual storm, is how much rain falls in the west of here. And that would be a slow-moving flood that would build up over days.
The Chaco Bottom Neighborhood Association President David Napier, you saw him there, says he's preparing for the worst because he knows how quickly the forecast can change. He's urging neighbors to move those cars to higher ground just in case. And David knows he was affected by Gaston down in Chaco Bottom. I saw him not long after the storm, and he was still looking for parts of his restaurant that had floated blocks away.
And good news is, think about Gaston. This was nothing like that. This will be nothing like that. 74 degrees in Richmond, 73 Ashland right now. You wake up to 73 Quinton. Most of us in the lower to mid 70s. Pretty sticky out there this morning. Schools are open for some. Let's talk about that school day forecast, 70 to 75. Plenty of sunshine this morning, mostly cloudy this afternoon, 80 to 85. Again, no effects today in terms of rain or real wind from Florence. We are looking at, again, a warm and humid day with increasing clouds. Winds out of the northeast today, 10 to 15, a high of 85. Tomorrow is the effects from Florence into Saturday, rainy, windy, 80, 83 on Saturday with rain, and that rain tapers off late in the day. Again, 1 to 3 inches of rain between Friday and Saturday. Morgan, back to you.
5:26, time now for this morning's Tech Bites. Here's ABC's Kendis Gibson and Stephanie Ramos in New York.
has gone from this tight little core and has just expanded rapidly. So the wind speed, or the maximum wind speed, has dropped. However, the size of the wind field has expanded dramatically. And what that means for us is the storm is headed toward North Carolina. A couple of adjustments here to the low country threats. I'm still maintaining an elevated threat here of high wind just because we still could have some tropical storm force winds in the low country. The likelihood of that is coming down a little bit, but still there's a possibility. Flooding rain in the moderate category. I'm still going through the 5 a.m. advisory through the National Hurricane Center and getting little nuggets of information out of that can help us with our flooding guidance here. But I have a feeling we're going to have to bump this up to the top of the scale. Tidal flooding, high surf erosion, and rip currents. Those are still moderate to high impacts this morning, but they will be going down through the day today as our wind becomes more offshore. Here's what's going on with the storm. Moving to the northwest at 15 miles per hour. Max winds at 110, pressure at 956. It's going to go in somewhere probably around or just to the north of Wilmington later today or early tomorrow morning as a Category 2 hurricane, most likely. Here we are Friday morning. And then as we head towards Saturday, it's going to be a tropical storm somewhere around Myrtle Beach or the North Carolina-South Carolina line. Maybe, believe it or not, Florence might be sitting right on top of Florence as we head towards Saturday morning. And then this is going to drift southwest into the northern parts of the low country before turning west, then eventually northwest into next week. By Sunday morning, it's going to be in the dead center of the state, most likely. What's happened to the track, you say, after what we saw with the European throwing everybody for a loop on Tuesday into Wednesday morning? That's why we stress guidance is not a forecast. It's a tool used to make a forecast. That is most likely not going to happen. It was taking into account a powerful storm that was very small and compact, whereas other guidance was showing the storm expanding and breathing a little bit more as it lifted to the north. And that's what we're seeing right now, which is why I have increasing confidence in the National Hurricane Center's forecast, which has actually trended a little farther north. And this makes perfect sense. This is almost the scenario that we were talking about yesterday morning that would be most likely of the storm coming onshore somewhere around Wilmington and then going inland. Because of friction, it would be pulled over land and then drift slowly down into South Carolina, as opposed to resisting going inland and going off the coast of North Carolina before coming back down into South Carolina. It was really tough to buy, and I was really struggling with that, and now it looks like we've gotten a consensus here this morning. Our computer models are tightening up on that area right around the North Carolina-South Carolina border with a drift through the Palmetto State over the weekend. Watches warnings still in place, virtually unchanged from the National Hurricane Center. Hurricane watch and storm surge watch up for the Charleston Metro. Hurricane and storm surge warning for Georgetown and Horry counties, and Williamsburg County, you're under a tropical storm warning. We could still see some storm surge inundation. In a reasonable worst case scenario, the highest would be up across Georgetown County at 3 to 6 feet. The really nasty storm surge of 6 to 13 feet up the North Carolina coast. Let's help you plan your day, because we've got some stuff we've got to do here in the low country to get ready for this big time flooding event. The flooding rain is going to be nasty over the weekend. So let's get ready. Let's get those sandbags going. Let's start lifting stuff up in the garages, lifting stuff up off the bottom floors, the unfinished basements, all that stuff. We need to get it upstairs as we head through the day today and into tomorrow. And good weather for that today. Upper 70s at 9 o'clock, mid 80s at noon, near 90 at 3, 87 at 6, and 83 at 9. And our forecast is essentially dry today, with just a slight chance of a shower. Better chances of rain coming tomorrow and stronger winds tomorrow. So let's try to get all of our flooding preps done today. Laura Smith, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Josh. Good morning to you. It is 5:35. Traffic looks good on I-26, 526, the Ravenel Bridge. So moving in both directions on most roads except I-26, because lane reversal still in effect from 526 all the way to Columbia at I-77 there, where it meets that interchange for Charlotte. However, lane reversal will end tonight at 6. They'll begin flushing cars at 6, so keep in mind that we'll be coming to an end here this evening. Right now, though, if you're getting ready to hit the road on either direction of I-26, headed towards Columbia, you are in the clear, wide open, barely any cars moving along near the College Park Road exit 203.
5:36 right now. Again, if you are planning to evacuate, you are encouraged to do so quickly. The Department of Transportation says South Carolina lane reversals are ending today. State troopers plan to close the eastbound lanes of I-26 tonight at 6. They will flush cars off the interstate and reopen entry and exit ramps as they head to Columbia. The entire interstate will be reopened when troopers reach Columbia at around 10 p.m. If you still need help with evacuation routes, call the number on your screen, 855-GO-SCDOT. Charleston International Airport is now closed. The runways shut down just before midnight. The airport will be closed until at least Friday. We're told you still have access to the terminal, but you should not stay there during the storm. The airport's parking facilities are open so you can pick up your cars.
5:37, Georgetown County officials is stressing the importance of evacuating. County and city officials say they haven't seen a lot of people getting out, which is a concern of theirs. Officials believe a lot of people are taking the storm lightly, but the reality is the county is expecting storm surge, wind, and flooding that could last for days. Officials say if you haven't left yet, now's the time to do it.
If you're contemplating whether you should evacuate or not, if you live in one of those zones, now's the time to take action. This isn't a storm that we need to play with, and it's something that we definitely need to, if you haven't made those preparations this afternoon, tonight, in the morning at the latest, is the time that you need to take action to evacuate the area, especially if you live in zones A, B, or C.
Again, that news conference held yesterday, so when he says in the morning, he's talking about now. They have a couple shelters open for evacuees, one at Andrews Elementary, the other is at Pleasant Hill Elementary.
Flooding is a big concern in Dorchester County. County officials say they will pre-position emergency crews in flood-prone areas to be able to respond as quickly as possible. The county's Public Works Department also out checking and clearing storm drains, canals, and other drainage areas. County Administrator Jason Ward says the county's goal is to prevent blockage in pipes.
We're checking all our catch basins and making sure they're cleared. We're actually blowing pipes out to make sure there's no sediment that's in our pipes. So anything we can do that we can go in and make sure that the pipes are clear, we're doing that at this time.
If you see flooding happening on any roads in Dorchester County during the storm, call the Citizen Hotline at 843-832-0393.
That's important. Don't assume that they know.
Right.
Berkeley County officials held another news conference as well as they get ready for Florence. And Sheriff Dwayne Lewis said yesterday, biggest concern is damage caused by the flooding. Lewis says if your property usually floods, you should protect yourself and your family. Goose Creek Mayor Greg Habib also talked about the importance of having fresh water on hand.
The water levels in our lake are lower, have been lowered by a couple of feet, giving water more room to move. Our water towers are topped off. We've got more than 3 million gallons in our water system ready to go in case there's a problem there.
Officials say that there are emergency assets in place throughout the county and will be made available to those who need them.
Next on News 2.
A live look as we get ready for the impacts of Hurricane Florence.
And
this is a look in North Carolina right now.
And more on local evacuations coming up next.
All right, 5:43, and we've been talking about it all morning long. Anyone who is in an evacuation zone, now's the time to get out before the storm hits.
And officials in Colleton County are taking this very seriously. News 2's Temple Ricky is live in Edisto Beach for us this morning, and Temple officials have been going door to door to make sure residents are evacuating.
Octavia, authorities have been urging residents to leave since earlier this week. Now I'm going to step out of the way so you can see what's going on behind me. You'll notice some barriers and a few cop cars. So they've blocked off 174 headed towards Edisto Beach. And this is all in an effort to make people appreciate that mandatory evacuation that's going on. Now on Wednesday night, a 24-hour curfew took place on Edisto Beach, and this means no one is allowed in the area. We're told residents that aren't planning on evacuating need to begin limiting their water and sewage use because starting today, all wells and wastewater pumps will be shut off. Now officials say that their next step is to go door to door in surrounding communities, and that includes Colleton County. Now we don't know exactly which neighborhoods yet, but we'll make sure to keep you updated as we learn more. Live in Edisto Beach, Temple Ricky, count on 2.
So Josh, 5:45 right now, if you're just waking up with us. So the storm is weakened, yes, but it's bigger.
Yeah, and that's what happens when you get that. Eventually, a hurricane, once it moves north to a certain point, and that usually happens about the time they get to our latitude, instead of this tightly wound buzzsaw of a storm, the wind field just expands. That's a natural progression, which was why earlier in the week, we were talking about coastal North Carolina needs to be prepared for a Category 4, but it may not quite be that when it gets there. And sure enough, it looks like it's most likely going to be a Category 2, but that's wind speed only. You have to remember with a storm this size, just like Irma and Matthew, we still got a storm surge along the South Carolina coast that most people would expect with a Category 3 strike out of storms that were, Matthew was a Category 1 when it made landfall here, and Irma wasn't even a hurricane over southwest Georgia when it put that kind of storm surge over our coast. So the water isn't going anywhere. That's still going to be a problem for North Carolina. So just because, and folks, you can say you may have some friends up there that are breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief. Well, they should be because of the wind threat, but the storm surge isn't going anywhere. We're still talking areas up there are going to see 10 plus feet, maybe 13, 14, 15 in some isolated areas as that wall of water moves up there.
Our viewers in Georgetown County are going to get a significant
I think there could be some areas that see, in a worst case scenario, potentially 3 to 6 feet. Yeah. But the biggest threat for that is going to be well to their north up across southeastern North Carolina.
And then further down the coast in our area, flooding a big concern for us.
Rain is our problem. Okay. That's exactly right. Still an elevated risk of high wind, but that threat is being assessed as we speak. Flooding rain, I'm bumping that up into the moderate category, not based off of what I'm seeing right now with the latest guidance package. I'm not quite ready to put that into a high threat, because a high threat would mean it's coming or it's happening, all right? This is still a potential area of concern, all right? So stick with us. Tidal flooding, still a potential area of concern. It has been happening, but the impacts have been moderate. They haven't really been significant, so we're going to leave that alone. High surf and erosion issues still could be quite high, and rip current threat is still high as well. But these threats, tidal flooding, high surf, that's going to go down through the day as our wind is more offshore today. So that's going to end our tidal flooding for now, but that could come back over the weekend depending on the track of Florence. The worst weather arrives in the low country Saturday and Sunday, and that could come in the form of significant flooding and some high winds. But there are still some things we've got to watch on this to see exactly where the center of the storm tracks. That will determine where the exact location of the axis of heavy rain will occur. Right now, the satellite image looking not as good as it did yesterday, as Brad mentioned. You can see the storm is pulling in dry air on the backside. The cloud field, though, is expanding rapidly, but there's the core of the storm moving right at the North Carolina coast, and ahead of it, driving that storm surge toward North Carolina. It is moving to the northwest at about 15 miles per hour with maximum sustained winds at 110, and there is your forecast moving right across the heart of South Carolina as we head through let's say Sunday or Saturday into Sunday, even into Monday morning. And as it looks like it will do so through early next week, which means rain could last for a while. Track guidance is tightened up, and it's tightened up nicely. It's in a consensus this morning. The only outlier is still the European, which is a weaker storm now than it had, but it still drifts it down the South Carolina coast. Don't want to completely take that out. What that would do, that track wouldn't really increase anything but our rain potential, because essentially it is weakening the storm now. It would give us a little bit higher probability of tropical storm conditions, but at this point we still don't want the European to verify, because if it did, it would really ramp up our rain totals. Coastal impacts continue in the forming of tidal flooding and surge with damaging surf and erosion this morning, but that's going to subside a bit today as our wind goes offshore. Our big concern is the potential for significant rainfall, and you can see a bullseye of heavy rain across the Carolinas. But I want you to look at something here. Look how sharp the cutoff is. You go from the line here in the yellow, that's 4 inches. The red is 6. The purple is 8. The gray is white, is 10. And the white is, we just really don't even want to talk about that. That's like 18, 20, 24 inches. Any subtle shift in the track of the center, it goes a little farther south, that will drag that heaviest rain south with it. Goes a little farther north, that heaviest rain will go north with it. And you can see, you can go from 4 inches of rain and travel 20 miles, 30 miles, and you hardly get a drop. That's how sharp the cutoff will be, and that's why we're not quite ready to move that flooding risk into the high category. Let's talk about your wind probabilities. Hurricane force wind probabilities are now essentially less than 10% for most of the low country. From Kingstree over to Georgetown to Murrells Inlet, a 10 to 20% chance of hurricane force winds. Tropical storm force wind probability is higher, and that would at least come in gusts. Most of us have about a 50 to 60% chance of seeing those tropical storm winds farther south, closer to 70, 80% the farther north you get, except Murrells Inlet and northern Georgetown County. That includes Pawleys Island and Litchfield. You're talking near 100% chance that you see tropical storm conditions. Right now, we're in the mid-70s. Let's walk you through your day. Here's what you can expect. Hardly a drop of rain out there this morning. That's a different story than we've been used to. Northwest winds are helping with that. Drier air moving in, that's going to help to cease the rain for today, but that's going to change a bit tomorrow as the outer bands of the hurricane begin to impact parts of Georgetown and Williamsburg counties by midday, and then those could drop farther south into the low country through the afternoon into the evening hours, as the core of the storm will be somewhere near the South Carolina, North Carolina line. And by Saturday morning, it's sitting right on top of us and raining to beat the band across the area to the east of the center. Here is the Low Country's only 10-day outlook, showing at 5:52 this morning a high today of 91. It's going to be breezy. Showers will develop late tomorrow, mainly after lunchtime, a high of 87. Then we'll be in the low 80s for Saturday and Sunday, with flooding rain likely across the area. That's going to be our potential there. And then as we move toward Monday, the rain could linger. Still some scattered storms Tuesday. Then Wednesday, Thursday, sunny and hot, but it'll be dry. Highs will be in the upper 80s to near 90 inland, with mid to upper 80s along the coast. Laura, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Josh. No problems in the traffic department. Green across the board. Downtown to the 52 connector, a 12-minute ride for you westbound on I-26. A less than 10-minute drive for you west Ashley to North Charleston, eastbound 526. And westbound 526 Highway 17 to I-26, 13 minutes. Lane reversal still in effect on I-26 from the Mark Clark to Columbia, I-77. That will end tonight at 6. This is a live look at I-26, mile marker 203, College Park Road. Looks good.
5:56 right now. Employees at the South Carolina Aquarium downtown are taking sea turtles to higher ground. The aquarium is closed through Friday because of the hurricane. Employees are still working to make sure the animals have what they need.
Firefighters on the Isle of Palms driving through neighborhoods, encouraging residents to leave using their loudspeaker, that is. Mayor Jimmy Carroll signed a proclamation declaring a state of emergency. He says people living on the Isle of Palms are at their own risk if they ignore the evacuation order.
Now, Count on 2, live and local in the Low Country. This is
Welcome to Good Morning Richmond and our Storm Tracker 8 coverage of Hurricane Florence this morning. I'm Morgan Dean. We have Storm Tracker 8 team coverage for you today. We have 3 Storm Tracker 8 meteorologists here in the studio for you. Talia Cunningham is also standing by in the emergency preparedness bunker. She's just gotten inside. We have a crew along the coast of North Carolina as well. We're going to check in with them in a moment as well. Let's start, though, with Storm Tracker 8 meteorologist Matt DiNardo and the very latest on this storm, weakening just a little bit, and that's some good news for folks along the coast, Matt.
Yeah, yesterday at this time, we were talking about a catastrophic Category 4 hurricane, winds 130 miles per hour. And then throughout the day yesterday, it continued to weaken. And last night and now this morning, winds 110 miles per hour, a Category 2 storm. Hey, it's still a dangerous storm, and we're going to show you some of the effects that will be felt, not just here in Virginia. I'm going to talk about that, but Michelle Morgan's going to talk about those effects in North Carolina, and Katie's going to talk about storm surge. So we got a lot to talk about with this, but let's go to the track right away, because that's what you want to know. Where is this going to make landfall? Is that southern shift still going on? 100%. In fact, we're expecting it to slightly weaken today. to a Category 2 just before landfall, 105, and then it comes on land around 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. near Wilmington, North Carolina, and then it begins to make that turn south and southwest into portions of South Carolina from Friday into Saturday, and then into western South Carolina during the day on Sunday, and then Tennessee and Kentucky is its next stops early next week. And again, we are well away from the center. We're on the northern edge of the storm, but we will still have some impact here. In fact, the biggest one, rainfall. Look at forecasted rainfall beginning at this evening at 8 p.m. where we're just looking at cloudy skies. Rain developing after midnight. We're going to have squalls of rain tomorrow off and on at times. It won't be pouring cats and dogs, but it'll be breezy. We'll have rain, then it may be let up, then it will rain again, then it will let up. And we're talking about 1 to 2 inches of rain for most, some places upwards of 3. A lot of tropical air, so as we've seen, we have tropical air. Sometimes more moisture comes out than what the models show. But again, 1 to 3 is a good bet for many of us. There's also winds. Winds, by the way, northeast today 10 to 15. You see that here. Tomorrow into Saturday, 15 to 25. Gusts could be 35 to 40. Sunny start, 74 degrees. Looking at more clouds increasing today as Florence approaches the coast. We'll see high clouds first and then thickening clouds throughout the day. Your high 85, but a dry day, a quiet day. 6:03 now. Let's continue our coverage of Hurricane Florence.
Emergency officials preparing and working around the clock now to make sure that everyone stays safe here in the Commonwealth during Hurricane Florence.
Storm Tracker 8 reporter Talia Cunningham is live at the Emergency Operations Center in Chesterfield with what's happening. Talia.
Katie Morgan, good morning. That's right. I'm actually inside now where things are underway. Not as crowded as it was yesterday, but obviously it's because it's still really early. Department heads are starting to show up. But one thing I do want to show you is this whiteboard right here. It has the 3 main focal points for these efforts. It's first evacuation. The second thing is shelters. And the third is logistics. This is what it's all about here today. The other thing I would like to show you here is these 2 screens. The first one is a schedule for later today. They've got conferences with VDOT. Everything is basically scheduled out, and then right next to it you see they are forecasting and watching this storm very, very closely. This is what they say. I just actually got an update from the emergency department here, and they do tell me that they are not letting their guard down just because the storm has changed shift a little bit. Now again, people are here like the National Guard, FEMA is here, the Public Health Department is here. They're all gathering information, and they have been all week, keeping a very close eye on this storm so that they can respond if need be. Everyone in this room is communicating, making those important decisions, and obviously updating the governor on what is happening. The goal, obviously, to keep everybody safe. There is going to be a big meeting later on this morning when more department heads start to get here at about 8 o'clock. But they do tell me that the first step, obviously, they're preparing now. Then it'll move to response once the hurricane hits, and then obviously recovery, which could take several months. We'll give you another update in a half an hour. Right now, live in Chesterfield, Talia Cunningham, 8 News.
Thanks, Talia. Now, here is why Governor Northam and area officials are still a little bit concerned. Now, this year is among the wettest years on record for the city of Richmond. Already, nearly 46 inches of rain has fallen compared to nearly 32 inches of rain that typically falls. Now, if rain falls in the western part of the state, the James River levels could rise as all of that water comes down, downflow into the Richmond area. So that is one of our concerns.
6:05 now. Even with the storm weakening, it will still bring heavy rain and winds into the Wilmington, North Carolina area.
Now, it's almost too late for folks to get off of the coast there. Brent Ramadna is in Wilmington for us and brings us a live report.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, that's right. Hurricane Florence downgrade, but that still means there will be very dangerous conditions here in Wrightsville Beach, or right across the beach here. We have heard that there is going to be evacuations that will continue. You can take a look and see, though, anyone allowed onto the island, well, that's not going to happen anymore. If people still want to leave, that is still allowed. Now, we did talk to a number of people yesterday who got out to take last-minute shots of the beach and whatnot, but for the most part, Wrightsville Beach, now a ghost town. Again, those evacuations stopped at 8 p.m. They wanted everyone off the island, and for the most part, that's the case. Now, this blockade has been set up, and that will remain here until conditions are deemed too dangerous. Police also will be responding to any emergency calls up until those conditions worsen. Now, as far as advice, the best advice from police, get out while you still have a chance. Reporting in Wilmington, Brent Ramadna, back to you.
6:06 now. We're talking about school closings here in our area. Lots of them for you today. VCU is closed today and tomorrow. Virginia Union closes its doors at noon today. Randolph-Macon also closed through Sunday. Prince George County Schools, they're closed today as well. Most major school districts, including Richmond, Hanover, and Henrico, are all closed tomorrow. Kids, listen up. We're talking about tomorrow. And as for you kids in Chesterfield County has not yet made a decision about classes on Friday. Keep it here on 8 News. We'll continue to show you those closings at the bottom of your screen. We'll also update you online, WRIC.com.
And here in the Storm Tracker 8 Weather Center with meteorologist Matt DiNardo, some pretty good signs in terms of the intensity of the storm.
Yeah.
Not too long ago, we were forecasting a landfall of a Category 3, maybe even 4.
Yeah.
Hurricane, major hurricane. It would have done catastrophic damage
Correct.
to that area affected. Now, it's still a hurricane.
Correct.
But expected to be less so.
Less in terms of the winds, right? We're looking at 110-mile-per-hour winds, maybe even decreased a bit before landfall. But it's going to bring with it a ton of rain. And this brings to the point of major flooding here. And this is a look at the rainfall forecast across North Carolina. You look at Raleigh, nearly 13 inches. You look at Wilmington, about 16.5 inches. And there's going to be some areas in here that will see 20 to 25 inches of rain. And then you look at Richmond, 1.62. That is a big difference. You know, when we were talking late last week, when we were saying, hey, you know, if this made land, it would like landfall Thursday, Friday, and then if you're watching us over the weekend, we were really focused in on this, and I was Facebooking like crazy saying, oh my gosh, this could be devastating. We could be looking at 15 to 20 inches of rain over us, catastrophic flooding, and we were talking about that all the way through that shift Tuesday morning. This could have been here. It's not. We got lucky. Our friends to the south, not so lucky. You're going to see a lot of flooding coming out of North Carolina. We expect landfall tonight around 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. For us, rainy Friday and windy as well. Let's talk about the rains. We're not going to be underneath the canopy of rain. We're going to be on the outer fringes. So we're going to have squally style rain. It's going to rain real hard, and then it's going to kind of stop. And then it's going to rain real hard, and then it's going to stop. That's what we're going to see Friday into Saturday. 1 to 3 inches of rain expected. Winds, by the way, northeast 15 to 25, some gusts 35 to 40. So, yeah, it'll be breezy to blustery, but not extreme winds. And as Florence pulls into South Carolina from Saturday into Sunday and really pulls into the western part of the state of South Carolina, we'll have some breaks of sun on Sunday, some clouds, and some pop-up showers. You can see the canopy of clouds now working the high clouds, Emporia, Wakefield, Virginia Beach, and all the way almost to Raleigh, the rain still far off the coast. We'll break down your entire forecast in just a couple of minutes, but I want to give you your 7-day planning forecast today. Increasing clouds, 85. Tomorrow, rainy and windy, 80. Saturday, rain tapers off, 83, and Sunday, clouds and some sunshine, 83, some pop-up showers. Back over to Michelle Morgan now. Look at that morning drive.
Thanks so much, Matt. We're still looking good for that early morning drive. No accidents to worry about before you're heading out the door. Taking a look at a few VDOT cameras here across central Virginia. It's trying to pick up here at I-95 at Maury, but again, nice gaps in the traffic. I-64 eastbound at Short Pump, looking good, and I-64 at the Shackle Valley Bridge. Again, starting to see more cars on the highways, but no major accidents to hold you back. Bigger picture here across the area on I-95. Again, looking really good for that early morning drive, so you have nothing to worry about before you head out the door. Katie?
Track of this storm is unprecedented, and our entire team is tracking Florence for you. Stay with 8 News and Storm Tracker 8 for the latest on the impacts on RVA and the Carolina coastline. We are on air and online around the clock.
You're watching a special edition of Good Morning Richmond here. We've been on since 4 today. We are tracking Florence for you. This is a live look from the South Carolina coastline. This morning still dark there. Not huge waves at this point, but that is going to change throughout the day as Florence approaches the U.S. coastline. We've got more coverage for you coming up. It is 6:11 now. 6:15 now as Florence gets closer to making landfall. We have 3 trained Storm Tracker 8 meteorologists here in the studio. Katie Dupree and Michelle Morgan will have a closer look at how the storm's going to affect so many Virginians where they vacation the beaches in North Carolina. But let's get right to Storm Tracker 8 meteorologist Matt DiNardo with the latest on the track and some of the diminishing strength overnight, which is important to point out, Matt, because this is good news as it approaches the coastline.
Right. I mean, we never want to see anybody get this, but I mean, especially when you talk about some of the beaches, you know, along North Carolina, from Emerald Isle, the Outer Banks, all the way south toward Wilmington. Getting hit with a Category 4 would have been devastating. It is down to a Category 3 storm. We're expecting, sorry, Category 2 storm it's down to. We are expecting landfall between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. Now, for us here in Central Virginia, that's really what I'm going to focus on is the track in our forecast. Rainy Friday and windy. Winds northeast 15 to 25 miles per hour. Some higher gusts 35 to 40. So a blustery day, but if you think back to some of the days we've had in March or that we get with those gales in November or December, that's the kind of weather we're looking at in terms of winds. It's just going to be warm and humid with temperatures around 80. And then we're going to have squalls of rain. We're going to get a period of heavy rain, and then we'll be light, and then there may be none, and then a period of heavy rain and light and none. And we're going to continue that into Saturday, 1 to 3 inches of rain expected. And Sunday, as this storm pulls into South Carolina and away into the western part of the state, our weather will get better, maybe just some spotty showers. You can see the clouds have rolled in across the eastern half of North Carolina all the way to Raleigh, but the rain still off the coast. We are seeing some showers in and around portions of the Outer Banks. Here's the latest information and the track. 110 miles per hour, Category 2 storm, moving to the northwest at 15. It will slide toward the coast today and tonight, and you can see some weakening possible, 110 down to 105 just before landfall. Remember, I said landfall around 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. That's when the eye will cross into Wilmington, and once it's over land for a while, it really begins to weaken quickly. 80-mile-per-hour winds, tropical storm late Friday night, early Saturday as we approach Columbia, South Carolina. This is when it's driving into western South Carolina. Again, once we go in that mode into central South Carolina, it's really pulling away from us. So during the day Saturday, our rain will taper off. And Sunday, clouds and some sunshine with maybe some spotty showers. Now, as far as that rainfall, let's break it down. Remember, squalls of rain at times. We're quiet today with sunshine this morning, then increasing clouds. Rain developing after midnight. Squalls of rain throughout the day on Friday into Saturday. Hey, new update here just came in. New update just came in showing less rain. That means the models we're looking at, and this is the GFS, is actually taking this a little bit farther south. Less rain. Good news. Chesterfield County, you're looking good for not calling off school. Can I say that right now? My daughter's mad at me.
Oh boy, Matt's not going to...
Andy Jenks is throwing tomatoes at the TV at me.
No Father's Day gift for you next year, sir.
All the Chesterfield County school teachers are like, Matt, stop. We want that day off. 74 degrees in Richmond, 73 in Ashland. We're looking at low 70s out toward Farmville and 79 in Williamsburg. All right, sunshine this morning. High clouds starting to stream in quickly and will be partly sunny by the lunch hour. As we go into the afternoon, more clouds rolling on in, a high today of 85. Coming home from work this evening, we are going to be cloudy, muggy, 82 at 8 p.m. As we go into tonight, cloudy, rain developing after midnight, rain off and on throughout the overnight into tomorrow morning. And then tomorrow during the day, we're looking again, as I said, squalls of rain, windy, 15 to 25 mile per hour winds. Saturday, rain tapers off late in the day as that system pulls south, 83. Sunday, 83 degrees with some sunshine, some clouds, and some pop-up showers. All right, Michelle Morgan is going to talk more about, where we vacation, which is the Outer Banks, Michelle, that's going to get hit pretty good.
You're absolutely right. Even though the threat has significantly lessened in the Virginia area, many Virginians, they vacation in Nags Head and also Kitty Hawk. So the storm is approximately 65 miles out, those outer bands here. We're looking at heavy rainfall for those areas. Storm surge, definitely a threat. Strong winds between 55, 65 miles per hour with wind gusts up to 80 miles per hour in those areas. Most of, actually all of the North Carolina coastline under a hurricane warning, and on top of that, a storm surge warning. So we're looking at structural damage for many structures in that area. Many roads impassable because of the flooding and roadway signs blown over, a lot of debris in that areas. So when we're looking at rainfall amounts for that area, about 5, go ahead and get out the way here, about 5 inches, even 6-7 inches in that area. Again, flooding and storm surge definitely a threat. So we're going to go ahead and send it over to Katie, and she'll talk more about the storm surge threat.
And that is really one of the threats that I think a lot of people forget about when it comes to a hurricane. They think about the obvious, those extreme winds for a long duration of time. They think about the heavy amounts of rainfall that you just pointed out there, Michelle. But storm surge is another factor, making it 3 huge factors as to why this storm is such a threat. Now let me explain to you storm surge here. I have this graph. It is quite literally hurricane force winds pushing on land and sloshing the water from the ocean onto the land. So you see the normal sea level there? Well, look at what happens when those hurricane force winds come on land. It pushes that ocean water on, and those coastal locations, the most vulnerable. And we also have, look at this, storm surge potential. The National Hurricane Center has put out a forecast as to what we're expecting. This has nothing to do with the amount of rainfall that's within the storm, completely separate here. So wind direction has everything to do with how bad that storm surge is going to be. Wilmington, North Carolina is the location that looks like it's going to be very close to where that eye makes landfall. You heard Matt's latest track there. So what is it looking like? You might actually think that the storm surge would be a little bit greater than this. The National Hurricane Center forecasting anywhere from 1 to even 3 feet above ground level for that flooding. But again, it all has to do with wind direction. A little bit farther north, they're getting those sustained northeast winds that are just pounding that ocean water from the Atlantic up these rivers. Notice New Bern in North Carolina. One of the last storms, they saw historic, devastating floods. They are right in between 2 rivers, the Pamlico River and the Neuse River. They could be seeing storm surge greater than 9 feet. It's 6:23. We'll be right back with more. Volunteers at Richmond Animal Care and Control want pet owners to do their research on pet-friendly places if they find themselves having to evacuate. The director says this year is the first time ever the facility is opening up its doors as an emergency shelter. Richmond plans to open 2 emergency shelters. The one at Linwood Holton Elementary is a pet-friendly site. Time now for GMA's First Look.
The eye of Hurricane Florence just a few hundred miles away from the Carolina coastline, only expected to bring a few inches of rain here in Richmond, but it could be disastrous for parts of North and South Carolina. A live look from the Carolina coast right there for you this morning. Thanks for joining us here on your Thursday morning, 6:30 now. I'm Morgan Dean.
And I'm Katie Dupree. We have team coverage of the storm for you this morning. Delaney Hall is in southwestern Virginia, where they could see mudslides. Talia Cunningham is at the emergency bunker in Chesterfield.
And we also have 3 Storm Tracker 8 meteorologists here in studio. Michelle Morgan standing by. Katie is as well. We're going to take a closer look at this storm and what to expect from it. But we begin with Storm Tracker 8 meteorologist Matt Denaro and the latest on the track for Florence. Matt?
And let's talk about that. Good morning to you. Good morning, everybody. Right now, Florence, a Category 2 storm. Winds 110 miles per hour. We are expecting a landfall after midnight tonight, probably around 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. near Wilmington, North Carolina. Friday here, a rainy day at times. Rain, it's going to be squalls. That's what we typically see when we see the outer bands coming on in. Rain, squalls off and on, and windy. Winds northeast 15 to 25 miles per hour, gusts 35 to 40. That'll last into Saturday, and between the 2 days, we could see 1 to 3 inches of rain. But I'm going to show you the newest update in one of our weather models, showing a little bit less than that for some. Sunday, as Florence heads into South Carolina and then into the central and western part of the state of South Carolina, we see some clouds, we see some sun, and we may have a few pop-up showers. But Sunday, not a bad day. Hit 5 slightly. That's at 2 a.m. And then once it comes on land near Wilmington, that's our track, as we've been talking about for a couple of days. It weakens, and it weakens more to a tropical storm late Friday night, early Saturday. Then it goes toward Columbia, then to the western part of the state as a tropical depression, and then out to Kentucky. Bye-bye, so long. I will say this, even though it's doing this big loop around us, we're still going to be rather humid after Florence is not an issue, so there's still going to be the risk of those pop-up showers and storms. All right, to rainfall amounts we go. And I said in that weather headlines 1 to 3 inches. That's what I think you can get. But one of the newer from what I showed just a few hours ago, even an hour ago, showing less rain, which means it's now pushing the storm farther south. Just take that for what it is. We're 74 degrees in Richmond, 75 in West Point, 79 in Williamsburg, 73 in Emporia. Again, that shift south we saw the other day. We wanted to be cautious about it. It really meant a big change for us, and you could see that. Sunshine this morning, 74 degrees, 78 at 10. By noon, partly sunny, 82. Into the mid-80s today with increasing clouds, but a dry day today. Tonight, after midnight, is when some of the showers come in. Tomorrow is the squally weather with the rain off and on. And because it's tropical air, we do get some pretty heavy downpours with that. All right, 6:33 now. Let's continue our Hurricane Florence coverage.
Emergency officials here in the area preparing and working around the clock to make sure that everyone stays safe across the Commonwealth, no matter what Hurricane Florence brings our way.
Storm Tracker 8 reporter Talia Cunningham is live at the Emergency Operations Center for the state. It happens to be in Chesterfield with what's happening. Talia.
Hey, Katie, Morgan, good morning. That's right, I'm actually inside now. I want to show you kind of what's going on. First thing I want to show you is the schedule for today. It looks like there's going to be a VDOT conference call soon, and in about an hour and a half, we're going to get an update from FEMA on the conditions and their response plan. Now, this right here is their radar. They've been tracking the storm, keeping a close eye on things, still really concerned about the Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach area. That area is going to see a lot of coastal flooding, and that's what they're preparing for at this moment. Now, a lot of departments are starting to roll in as the morning continues to roll through. We've got the military over here. The Virginia National Guard is on standby. State police are here. We've got the public health department. Everybody's just here to figure out a response plan when Hurricane Florence does hit in about a day or so. So everybody here is working to get things under control. Their main concerns right now are evacuation plans and coming up with shelters and responding to people in need. We've got people here right now. We're working on financial plans, budgets, FEMA. Like I said, we're going to get an update from them in a little bit, but it's all about coming together to communicate, making those important decisions, as well as informing the governor on resources about what's happening. So again, I just talked with the emergency officials. We're about to get a brief and update at about 8:30 this morning. We'll be sure to bring you all those updates both on air and online. Right now, live in Chesterfield, Talia Cunningham, 8 News.
That mandatory evacuation in Virginia still in place. Governor Northam is warning everyone in Zone A to leave now if they haven't yet. This includes Virginia's low-lying coastal areas and Hampton Roads in the eastern shore. The state is still concerned about dangerous storm surge coming on land, the high winds in the Commonwealth too.
If you're already out of harm's way, please stay there. And the storm has been unpredictable. We also did not want to stop the evacuation and bring people back in if those winds prevented safe travel on the highways or forced the closure of any of our bridges and tunnels.
President Trump has granted a disaster declaration for Virginia that will allow the Commonwealth to get federal money and resources.
As the storm approaches, the press is on to get the homeless off the streets and into shelters as well. Bus tickets to shelter or higher ground are being offered to those living on the streets. Nonprofits, along with the Richmond Police Department's Hope Unit, climbed under bridges yesterday and visited encampments along the river, urging folks to get to safety.
There is definitely some added stress, I think, with the folks that we've run into about which way the hurricane's going to go, what's going to happen in Richmond, what's going to happen over the weekend.
Shelters like Caritas have expanded capacity ahead of the storm hitting.
Now, with the amount of rain that we have already seen this year, the city is concerned about trees falling. The ground is so saturated. Now, if you are worried about any trees in your yard, check them for decay and see if they are leaning over. Make sure anything valuable is away from them. Maybe you have your car parked underneath it. And if you're concerned, don't try to handle falling trees yourself.
They're very dangerous. I do not recommend anybody go out and just, unless you're very experienced, start cutting on a tree that's leaned on anything.
If damage does start to happen, make sure that you pull out your phone and start snapping pictures and videos for insurance purposes.
6:37, almost 6:38 now. We're over in the Storm Tracker 8 Weather Center. We are tracking Florence.
Yeah.
We've been doing it for days now.
Sure have.
And we watched it to continue to improve, at least for our area. And now we're actually seeing some improvements for the Carolina coast. And that is great news this morning.
Right. And that improvement, of course, has to do with the fact that we're down in wind speed.
Wind speed, but
right.
that's just one of the
Right.
factors
Correct.
of a hurricane.
Yeah, we always talk about it's a three-pronged thing, right? We talk about the wind speed, which of course knocks power lines out, knocks trees down, does damage to roofs, et cetera, et cetera. Then there's the flooding concern, which is brought on by the heavy rain, also brought in by what Katie's been talking about, that storm surge, that push of water that comes in with a landfall hurricane, also kind of sloshes our bays as well, and it will do that for Currituck Sound and things like that. Now, at the same time, there's also, it's got the storm surge, you got the winds, and you got the rain. Those are the three prongs that we're looking at. All right, let's talk about Florence. Winds 110 miles per hour. We expect landfall will occur shortly after midnight, around 2, 3 o'clock this morning near Wilmington. And that's, of course, when the eye crosses land. So when the physical eye crosses over land, that's what's called a landfall hurricane. Winds 80 miles per hour at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, then down to a tropical storm late Friday night, Saturday. And again, this trend here into South Carolina and then western South Carolina and then finally into Tennessee and Kentucky, really keeping this system away from us. We look at the picture here. I mean, it looks pretty in terms of what a hurricane should look like. You got a well-defined eye, the radar showing the bands of rain. We're seeing some showers into the Outer Banks and eastern portions of North Carolina, very light. Clouds rolling on into Raleigh and even up into southeastern Virginia. And today will be a changeable day in terms of sunshine this morning and then clouds this afternoon. 74 in Richmond right now, 73 in Ashland, mid-70s, 80 out toward Norfolk. And keep in mind, by the way, it's going to be real humid today. So here's the breakdown. 78, high clouds rolling on in now through the next couple of hours. Partly sunny at noon, then mostly cloudy this afternoon as clouds thicken up for that ride home, but we're dry today. Tomorrow, squalls of rain at times with winds 15 to 25 miles per hour, some gusts upwards of 30 to 35, maybe even 40. Saturday, as that system pulls into South Carolina, clouds and some showers, and then sun breaks developing on Sunday with maybe a pop-up shower. Let's get a look now at that morning drive. Here's Michelle Morgan.
A good morning to you. There's an accident in New Kent County this morning. This is right before the ramp to 33 on I-64 westbound at mile marker 22. The west left shoulder and left lane are closed, causing some minor backups this morning. Otherwise than that, we're looking pretty good across central Virginia. Bringing up some cameras here. I-95 at 7th Street. Starting to look busy though, but nice gaps in the traffic. I-95 at Maury looking pretty good. And I-95 at Franklin looking good as well. Bigger picture here across central Virginia on I-95. Again, no major accidents to worry about this early morning. Katie?
The recent track of Florence has western Virginia getting a little bit of rain, at least maybe more so than here in central Virginia. Coming up, we have a live report about how folks are getting ready there.
You're watching Good Morning Richmond at 6:41, taking a live look out there at a hotel in Chesterfield County. Lots of folks that have fled the coasts of Carolina, North Carolina, South Carolina, taking refuge here in the Richmond area. Lots of rooms being booked up. We've got more on that coming up in just a moment. Also, that Storm Tracker 8 forecast and the latest on where Hurricane Florence is headed. It's 6:42 now.
Impact is extreme, so what we need to do is go ahead and make preps now for the potential of significant flooding. Tidal flooding, high surf erosion, and rip currents, all those things have been ongoing. They're still in the moderate and high category. Now, the tidal flooding concern stops a bit today because the offshore wind that we're starting to see out there ends that, but that could come back over the weekend depending on the track of the center. The worst weather arrives Saturday and Sunday with significant flooding and high winds possible across the area. Flooding will probably be the main concern. On the satellite, a very strong storm. Look how far to the north those cirrus clouds are going all the way up into the mid-Atlantic coast. And as we zoom in here on the storm, a very, very robust area of thunderstorms right across the center. However, it's losing the definition of that eye, but all of this water is being pushed up toward the coast of North Carolina, and a landfall near Wilmington, somewhere I'd say 20, 30 miles either side of the city limits there is where this thing's going to go on shore. Moving to to the northwest at 15, max winds at 110. The pressure's at 956, and it is slowing. The forward motion is beginning to slow, and it's going to crawl onshore by tomorrow morning and just devastate this area with storm surge across North Carolina. Then a turn and drift to the southwest is expected across the South Carolina low country or PD through the weekend into the Midlands by Sunday. Again, it depends on where the center goes as far as how much rainfall we see. A tight cluster of computer models here, and this is not a good scenario for South Carolina because what it will do is drag Atlantic moisture across much of the state, and it will follow the center to the west and northwest. And that's where we will see the heaviest rain. Our high-resolution forecast model shows a dry day today for the most part. So today's the day. If you flooded over the past few years in your neighborhood, start making those precautions or getting those precautions together now in preparations for flooding. Sandbags, moving things up to higher elevation, getting things off the ground outside or maybe in your lower levels of your unfinished basements, things like that. You want to get that up today because conditions could go downhill starting tomorrow afternoon. And it's also going to be windy tomorrow afternoon. The high resolution forecast model that's run in-house here showing thunderstorms developing tomorrow afternoon as far south as upper Charleston County. And boy, these are going to be gusty across Georgetown and Horry counties. By Saturday at midnight, the core of the storm sitting somewhere between Horry, Florence, Williamsburg, Georgetown counties in that general area. Yes, that's Florence, the county, or Florence, South Carolina, not the hurricane. It will be actually near Florence, we think, Saturday morning. And then drifting through the day Saturday. And look at all of this heavy rain that develops on the east side of it. This is our latest high resolution guidance, which actually makes sense as far as the track is concerned, painting a ribbon of 10-inch plus rain totals across parts of Williamsburg, Georgetown, Horry, northern Charleston, northern Berkeley counties, and tapering quickly to 2 to 4 inches back toward Walterboro. This is a model, not a forecast. It's a possible scenario. I'm showing it because I want you to see how different weather could be. From as far to the west as Walterboro, in this particular scenario, you would only get a trace to 2 inches, maybe 2 to 4, with as much as a foot or more up across Georgetown County. That's what we're talking about, and that's why we cannot pin down exactly that flooding threat yet until things come into more focus. Our wind forecast looks like this. Hurricane force winds are on the low end here as far as a probability in the low country. Most of us less than 10%. It does go up a bit as you head toward Murrells Inlet, where it's about a 20-30% risk. All of us have a fairly substantial risk of at least tropical storm force wind gusts as we head through the day Saturday into Sunday. Right now we're in the 70s, and let's plan out your day as we look ahead with a high resolution forecast model today showing those offshore winds keeping us dry. Today is the day to make those flooding preps as we head toward the weekend, because that's going to be the main threat. Don't discount the wind issues either, but again, I think a lot more of us are going to have impacts from water than anything else. Breezy today and tomorrow, especially late today into tomorrow, with rain developing late tomorrow, highs near 87. Low 80s over the weekend, a wind-driven rain likely for all or parts of the low country. But we know parts of the low country will see it, but all of us may. Still some questions regarding the exact extent of that precipitation shield, Laura, as it moves into the low country over the weekend.
All right, Josh, thanks so much. If we can get straight to our DOT camera, you can see we're all agreeing here when it comes to drive times. A live look here at mile marker 203. Looking good here this morning. All lanes still reversed on I-26. However, that will come to an end tonight at 6.
Well, we've been saying it all morning. Anybody who is in the evacuation zone should listen and leave before the storm hits.
And officials in Colleton County are taking this very seriously. News 2's Temple Ricky is live on Edisto Beach for us this morning, and Temple officials have been going door to door to make sure residents are evacuating.
Those door-to-door efforts began a little bit earlier on Edisto Beach this week, and they'll continue through Colleton County throughout the rest of the week. Now, if you look behind me, you can see a few barriers and a couple police cars. As we were riding up on Highway 174, there were multiple signs saying mandatory evacuation, do not enter. Now on Wednesday, this is when the 24-hour curfew took effect on Edisto Beach. This means no one is allowed to be in the area. We're told residents that aren't planning on evacuating need to begin limiting their water and sewage use. Starting today, all wells and wastewater pumps will be shut off. Now, like you mentioned a little bit earlier, officials say the next step is to do door-to-door throughout Colleton County. Now, we're not sure what neighborhoods and communities that will entail, but we'll be sure to keep you updated as we learn more. Live on Edisto Beach, Temple Ricky, count on 2.
What am I doing? Am I? Good morning, 6:53, continuing to follow Hurricane Florence as the storm is approaching Wilmington right now. We have a live look at the coast of North Carolina as we speak, as the storm is approaching the coast there, with the first clouds moving overhead and the first rain bands about to come in. This is near the Emerald Isle area, Wrightsville Beach area up around Wilmington, where the waves are breaking on shore now. We will show you what to expect. Oh, there's Wilmington, and look at that. What a great shot. The hurricane flags flying there in Wilmington as folks get ready for what is going to be the worst day this coast of North Carolina has seen, I would say, and potentially since Fran in the 90s. It's been about 20 years. So this is going to be a really, really rough day up there and a really rough maybe 48 hours. Let's show you what's going on right now. Northwest winds are motion at northwest. Why do I keep doing that? It's moving to the northwest at 15 miles per hour, although we do have northwest winds at about 15 miles per hour this morning. Max winds are at 110. The storm is charging northwest toward the coast of North Carolina, then comes to a crawl by tomorrow morning and just chews away at the North Carolina and upper South Carolina coast through the day Saturday. By Saturday morning, it's only going to be somewhere between near Myrtle Beach, Florence, or perhaps near Lumberton, and slowly making a southwest drift into the South Carolina Midlands. Here's our high-resolution forecast model giving us good news today because we need to be making preparations for flooding this weekend. The potential still exists for significant flooding across the low country, if not across parts, potentially all of the area. So we need this dry day today, and we're going to get it. Those northwest winds keeping the rain away from us. It's also going to help with some of the tidal flooding issues we've had along the coast. Today's the day to get the sandbags ready. Today's the day if you've got a low floor that has flooded in the past in your home here over the past few years, get everything up and out of the way in the potential here as the potential for flooding exists. Isolated showers begin tomorrow morning in Williamsburg and Georgetown counties, and then weather goes downhill through the day. By 3 p.m., rain bands will be circulating along and to the north of I-26 around the center of Florence. And then by Saturday, the storm is meandering over the low country or the Midlands, somewhere in that area through the day Saturday. And look what it does as far as rain is concerned. Anywhere between 2 and 4 inches to as much as a foot or more of rain could fall across parts of the low country as we head into the weekend. Let's get a look at the low country's only 10-day outlook, which is showing the potential existing here for widespread rain over the weekend across the low country, and the wind is going to be picking up with that as well. Tropical storm conditions will be possible Saturday and Sunday. A very low probability of hurricane conditions, but we cannot rule it out. Hopefully we're going to be drying out by Monday, Tuesday, although guys, the rain could linger into the first part of next week.
All right, we're anticipating a number of press briefings again this morning. We'll certainly bring those to you live. Sign up for on the app, get the push alerts, and we'll send you those alerts right to your phone.
And we'll have local updates throughout the morning.
Now, Count on 2, live and local in the Lowcountry. Now, Count on 2, live and local in the Lowcountry. This is News 2 Today.
We're getting tremendous accolades from politicians and the people. We are ready, but this is going to be one of the biggest ones to ever hit our country. Residents in the path of these devastating storms should comply with all evacuation orders and other emergency instructions. Protection of life is the absolute highest priority, and that's what we're doing. It's called protection of life. So God bless everybody and be careful.
President Trump urging Carolina residents to evacuate if you are in the cone of uncertainty. Good Thursday morning, everyone. Today is September 13th. I'm Octavia Mitchell.
And I'm Brad Franco. Glad you're here. Let's get right to the Lowcountry's morning meteorologist, Josh Marthers. A lot of us went to bed on that 11 p.m. update. What's new here?
Really not much. Everything looks to be the same to me. The storm, we talked about this yesterday, that went through an eye wall replacement and was pulling in a lot of dry air, and that's helped to bring down the wind speeds. But to do that, in order for that to happen, the wind field actually has to expand, and we've noticed that overnight, and that happens a lot when these storms begin to get to the north. So you've got this large wind field now associated with Florence, but as overall, the winds near the center of the storm are lower because it's more distributed across the storm itself. You can see here it comes onto the shores of North Carolina, those outer bands now beginning to affect that area. And right there is the eye of Hurricane Florence, and it looks like it's going to go in or stall somewhere just around or to the north of Wilmington before turning southwest into the Lowcountry. So we've made some adjustments to the Lowcountry threats this morning, and we'll continue to do that as we go through the day today. Still an elevated risk of high wind. I'm still assessing that right now based off of the latest forecast. I want to see what the storm looks like as it begins to turn southwest and head back towards South Carolina late tomorrow and into Friday. Flooding rain, upping that to moderate. We're probably going to take that to the high end. High surf, erosion, rip currents, those are all significant issues right now, but those will be subsiding through the day today, except for the rip current threat as the wind is now going offshore. Here's what we have as far as the computer models are concerned. You can see there is a tight cluster now of consensus that this is going to go in near southeastern North Carolina and then move southwest into South Carolina. This track right here that you see would bring a huge amount of rainfall across southeastern North Carolina and much of eastern South Carolina as the storm pulls moisture off the Atlantic. And really, I mean, it is going to rain like crazy starting tomorrow, or starting Saturday and into Sunday, I should say. Hurricane watches warnings still in place. And as we go through the day today, those may be adjusted just a bit. Still, a worst case scenario storm surge of 2 to 4 feet along the Charleston County and Colleton County coast, a 3 to 6 foot storm surge Georgetown up to Myrtle Beach, and then just the unimaginable up here across North Carolina, 6 to 13 feet storm surge coming into much of North Carolina's coastline. As you head out the door this morning, most of us are sitting in the mid to upper 70s. Let's plan out your day. It's going to be a hot day today with highs in the low 90s, upper 70s to around 80 at 9 o'clock. We'll be in the mid 80s at noon. Notice the rain chance is pretty much at 0 today with winds out of the north-northwest at about 15 to 20 miles per hour. Those are going to be picking up as we head through the afternoon and especially overnight tonight and into the day tomorrow. And we could even see some gusts of tropical storm force by tomorrow across the Lowcountry. But I think the best chance for that may hold off until the weekend. Laura Smith, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Josh, and good morning to you. Happy Thursday. Lane reversal going to end here at 6 this evening. Still in effect until 6, and then Highway Patrol and DOT will begin those flushing of cars headed eastbound on I-26 to Columbia. But this is still in effect this morning through 6 tonight on I-26. All in all, though, looking good if you are getting ready to leave town. Let's go to the DOT, and you can see barely any cars moving on I-26 at College Park Road 203 this morning.
4:34 right now. Again, if you are planning to evacuate, you are encouraged to do so quickly. The Department of Transportation says South Carolina lane reversals are ending today. State troopers plan to close the eastbound lanes of I-26 tonight at 6. They will flush cars off the interstate and reopen entry and exit ramps as they head to Columbia. The entire interstate will reopen when troopers reach Columbia at around 10 p.m. If you still need help with evacuation routes, call the number on your screen right now. That is 855-GOSCDOT. Charleston International Airport is now closed. The runways shut down just before midnight. The airport will be closed until at least Friday. We're told the public still has access to the terminal, but you should not stay there during the storm. The airport's parking facilities are open so travelers can pick up their cars.
Georgetown County officials holding a news conference to stress the importance of evacuating. County and city officials said they haven't seen a lot of people leaving the county, which is a concern to them. Officials believe many are not taking the storm seriously enough, but the reality is the county say if you haven't left yet, now's the time to do it.
If you're contemplating whether you should evacuate or not, if you live in one of those zones, now's the time to take action. This isn't a storm that we need to play with, and it's something that we definitely need to, if you haven't made those preparations this afternoon, tonight, in the morning at the latest, is the time that you need to take action to evacuate the area, especially if you live in zones A, B, or C.
And 2 shelters are open for evacuees at Andrews Elementary and Pleasant Hill Elementary.
A risk of flooding is the concern in Dorchester County. County officials say they will pre-position emergency crews in flood-prone areas to be able to respond as quickly as possible. The county's Public Works Department has also been out checking and clearing storm drains, canals, and other drainage areas. County Administrator Jason Ward says the county's goal is to prevent blockages in pipes.
We're checking all our catch basins and making sure they're cleared. We're actually blowing pipes out to make sure there's no sediment that's in our pipes. So anything we can do that we can go in and make sure that the pipes are clear, we're doing that at this time.
If you see flooding happening on any roads in Dorchester County during the storm, you are asked to call the Citizen Hotline at 843-832-0393.
Berkeley County officials held another news conference on Florence Wednesday, and Sheriff Dwayne Lewis said the biggest concern is damage caused by flooding rather than the winds. Lewis says if your property usually floods, you need to protect yourself and your family. Goose Creek Mayor Greg Habib said that the importance here is having fresh water on hand.
The water levels in our lake are lower, have been lowered by a couple of feet, giving water more room to move. Our water towers are topped off. We've got more than 3 million gallons